Mic on? I heard that like 10 times Tuesday night at least. Okay, welcome everybody to the City Hall, to the Historic City of Ojai Historic Preservation Commission meeting. It is Thursday, May 11th, 2023. We're starting this meeting pretty close to 5 o'clock. Couple items. Let's do, Alex, are you ready to do roll call?
Yes, sir.
Okay, before you do that, let me just do one thing so people will know why his name's called. So at Tuesday night city council meeting, the full council unanimously approved council member Andrew Whitman's recommendation for Craig Walker to rejoin the Historic Preservation Commission. I've been around so long, I remember when he was on it before. Actually, I remember when Rick was on it before too. So welcome, Craig. So Craig went in yesterday and got confirmed and signed all those pledges that it's crazy. And so, Alex, will you now do the roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Convery?
Here.
McHatton?
Here.
Akins?
Here.
Bisaccia?
Here.
Walker?
Here. Excellent. Thank you. Also, I want to recognize Mayor Sticks, who is our liaison tonight. And that worked out great. Okay, if you'd please stand and follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Let me just read public communications. Public communications is the time set aside during the Historic Preservation Commission meeting for members of the public to address the Historic Preservation Commission on items of city business other than scheduled agenda items. Matters raised at this time may be briefly discussed by the commission and will generally be referred to staff and or placed on a subsequent agenda. Under state law, other than for emergency items, no action can be taken at this meeting. Is she coming to see me? There we go. Okay. So I have two speaker cards but they're for item number 3. Alex, do we have anybody on Zoom that is not speaking on an item that's scheduled on the agenda?
I can't ascertain that during Zoom, but
How many people do you have on Zoom?
I have 2 people on Zoom.
Can you ask them to raise their hand if they wish to speak during public communications?
Yes. If you are on Zoom and you would like to speak now during public communications, please raise your hand. Yeah, there's no one raising their hand.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Museum representative report. So I got this from Wendy. Our current exhibit, Innovators from Ojai Valley, is on view through the middle of June. This fabulous exhibit that's talking about businesses, ideas, musicals, Academy Awards, all kinds of things that originated here in the Ojai Valley and have gone on throughout the world and have brought folks and their success and recognition back to our town. It's the same one that was up when they had the Commissioner Appreciation Dinner. A lot of fun. Feasting on History, Art, and Beautiful Homes was last Saturday. This is a fundraiser where we got 9 wonderful families who had either a home with history, a home with art, or just a beautiful home. We started doing this it was a feasting on history, and then we kept expanding it. Then it became a feasting on art to get more homes in and more people that wanted to be included. And now it's the feasting on history, art, and beautiful homes. And I can tell you several of these homes have history, art, and beautiful homes, so it's not just uniquely qualified. The wonderful thing is that they provide their homes, they provide the meals, and the museum gets the entry fees. And so it's a fabulous fundraiser and wonderful to meet the people. Wendy goes on to say, entries for the Ojai Seniors Poetry Contest are due online or to the museum no later than May 31st. This is in conjunction with a local Thatcher student, the museum, and the Gables of Ojai. So I think you can find more of that on probably the museum Facebook page and the museum website. So thank you for that. Consent items. Okay, consent item number 1 for the minutes. Any corrections?
I don't have anything. And they weren't here.
Oh, okay. Oh, the two on my left. So I will point out, sorry, Alex, that if you look at the first page, it is a motion to approve the August 11th, 2022 regular meeting as amended. If you look at the top, when we're talking about minutes on March 9th, it is a motion to approve the August 11th, 2022 regular meeting as submitted. So that date needs to be changed to March 9th, 2023 on item number 2. The other thing, and after today, I'll tell you this is exceedingly important. So if you go down to informational item number 4, you go down to the second paragraph under Chair Akins. It says review of Matilaha Junior High School for landmarking. It's actually a review of Matilaha Junior High School for history. Okay, that's what we had suggested for this meeting tonight. So if we could get that correction made also, Alex. Any other questions, or is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve with the changes that you noted.
Okay,
And I'll second that.
okay. Alex, roll call, please.
Can I make a quick change?
Yes.
Something that we discussed prior to the meeting may not be as important as those two things, but on the agenda, number 4, we are discussing the prospect of recognizing the jail after Constable Harry Hunt as opposed to naming after. I think the language was supposed to be recognizing.
Oh, yeah, yep. That sounds good. Okay. So, Alex, if you'd call the vote, please.
McHatton,
Yes.
Akins,
Yes.
Convery,
Yes.
Bisacha,
Yes.
Walker.
Okay, so the next item that's up is,
Second.
yes,
Rick wasn't here either, so he would have to abstain.
Yes, should I abstain?
you should
All
for
right,
that item. Yes,
so I change my vote to abstain.
great, thank you. Did you get that, Alex?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you.
Brian, I'm going to close the door. I think it's a little.
I'll do it. I got it.
Thank you. That's better.
So we'll move on to item number 3. I do want to recognize that we have other guests that are here in association with item number. Where'd 5
Doing
go?
item number 2 first.
Yeah.
No?
We just did 2 minutes. So now we're going to move to item number 3.
2 proposed.
2?
We skipped a page.
Oh, sorry.
I have a,
What am I doing?
Keep turning. Turn the next page.
I also just have a
Ta-da.
quick question.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the agenda.
Just if the chair wants to consider changing the order, since there are people here for item number 4, you of course have the ability to do that. Just-
Okay, let me just ask one question real quick. Alex, is Sarah on the Zoom call?
I believe her initials are SC, correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir. She's raising her hand
Okay,
now.
I just needed to make sure she was on Zoom. Okay, so what's being suggested and proposed is that we rearrange the schedule and move item number 4 to the next item that we consider. So, everybody okay? We do have guests that are here.
We're going to move item 3 to item 2.
Wait, it says item 4 right there.
I think it's,
That's why I was getting confused.
Here,
Mine says 4,
go back to 3. That's
3.
That's 3.
No, we're not doing that one.
I thought you wanted to do that one.
Oh, no, we're going to do, well, I was going to move to that next, but
Okay.
instead we're going to move the discussion on the Ojai jail.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Sorry.
Brian? Brian? I think it's going to be a very quick update for the Downtown Historic District. I don't know if we have to switch it. A very quick update for the Downtown Historic District? I don't know if we,
Number 2 is,
I mean, we could probably get that done within 5 minutes.
number 3 is,
Downtown Historic District.
It's going to be very quick.
We can't hear the discussion.
It's not, we're just talking
Anything you say on the dais is public discussion. You have to be speaking on the mic. You can't be having private conversations.
so thank you. We're looking at rearranging the agenda this evening, and we're going to move on now as on the agenda number 2.
Yes.
Discussion item number 2.
So we're going to go to discussion item number 2, and then we will go to discussion item number 4, and then we will come back to discussion item number 3.
Gotta amend the agenda though.
Actually, we don't take comments from the gallery.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you for your instruction.
Just
We're
letting you know that I'm not
rearranging
going
the
to
agenda.
listen to that the whole meeting long. Thank you.
Okay,
We keep Mara around to keep us in.
thank you. Thank you, Chair. So discussion item number 2 is a discussion of the proposed local downtown historic district, and this is a time to give the ad hoc committee an opportunity to update the commission and the public. So I'll send that on to you. Thank you.
Great.
Want me to
Thank you,
take
Mara. Okay, Commissioner McCann, I'll turn it over to you for
Okay.
an update.
So our ad hoc of Craig Walker, Brian Akins, and myself will no longer be able to go on because now that Craig Walker is on, so it's going to just be me and Craig Walker working, going further. So I wanted to announce that so we stay within compliance. And we have been meeting, we've been working on maps, working on the final story that we want to really present, and hopefully by next month we should have something to show, but not yet. So
Yes, that's the plan. Okay. Any questions for the commissioners on the item number 2, the Downtown Historic District update? Do we have any public comments for item number 2? Alex?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, then we will move to item number 4.
Thank you, Chair Akins.
And take staff.
This project is, or this, discussion item is a discussion of the prospect of recognizing the city jail after Constable Harry Hunt. And right now, we have an opportunity for the commissioners to discuss the prospect and pathway to recognizing the jail after Constable Hunt. There are several documents that are provided in your packet and also at the front table by the door. And those items include a discussion with Harry Hunt Jr. at the Ojai Valley Museum. There's an Ojai Valley news story that's dated from 1994. There's a proclamation from our mayor that was presented to the family in March of this year. And there are some other documents as well. I guess another one is Ojai Police Department. And again, they're in your packet and they're out at the table. And now I'll open it up to you to have your discussion. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions from commissioners on what Mara just shared with us? Okay, before we proceed, or as a part of proceeding, I would like to introduce some key people that are here, and then we'll hear from one person on over Zoom, and then we will hear from another person here. We have no speaker cards for item number 4. So I would like to do some introductions. With us presently are Harry Hunt Jr. Harry, if you'd stand, please. So, yeah. So I believe Harry will be speaking a little bit. I asked him if he would bring a show and tell, because I've heard about these things, but I have never actually seen one. And so I got to hold one, and that would be a Purple Heart that his father won in the war. And so we're blessed that he brought that and several other medals. And then Harry, would you like to introduce your two guests and family members to your left?
Yes, this is my daughter Kimberly Hunt Smith,
Oh.
and my wife, of course, Vesta Hunt. And,
Thank you for having us.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And it's our pleasure to wish Vespa a happy birthday today. All of these dates lined up. Another key date that's coming up next week is May 15th. May 15th is National Peace Officers Memorial Day. So a lot of things came together. So at this time, I would like to ask Alex if you would allow Sarah Cowan to speak with us. Sarah, and if you could just tell us who you are and why you're here to help us understand what's going on, or better appreciate it.
Yes. Good evening, esteemed members of the Ojai Historic Preservation Commission. My name is Sarah Cowan, and I am a friend of the Hunt family of Ojai. I am honored to speak to you tonight about a man I never knew, but whose story of heroism and ultimate sacrifice I've admired for nearly 2 decades. Constable Harry Hunt was a family man, a trusted friend of this community, a war hero, and a lawman who gave his life protecting the people of the Ojai Valley. He is the only law enforcement officer in the history of Ojai serving under its jurisdiction to lose his life in the line of duty. April 2023 marked 80 years since his death. It is my humble request to this commission that he be recognized for his heroism and sacrifice by renaming the historic Ojai City Jail for Constable Harry Hunt. The first time I ever came to Ojai with Constable Hunt's granddaughter, Kimberly, the jail was one of the first places she took me. A small, unassuming structure with incredible significance to the Hunt family. It's a jail for which Constable Hunt held the keys. During his 10 years on patrol from 1933 to 1943, he locked up the criminal troublemakers. His boys, Harry and Jim, even saw the inside of its cells. Part of the family lore includes stories about the young boys spending small amounts of time in the vacant jail to keep them out of trouble while their dad patrolled the town. Constable Hunt was an exceptional man in many ways. He was a devoted husband to Lena and a wonderful father to 3 children, Harry, Jim, and Barbara. He served 2 tours with the Army in both the Mexican Border War and World War I. He served with such honor and distinction, he was awarded a Purple Heart. After getting out of the service, the country was in the throes of the Great Depression, so he went to work for Shell Oil. It was there that he suffered a life-threatening injury in an oil field accident that cost him his right arm. For a man who was right-handed, this could have meant the end of any career in the 1930s. But for Harry Hunt, it meant an opportunity to switch to law enforcement. His exemplary military service record, combined with his exceptional marksmanship as a one-armed, left-handed shooter, made him the perfect man to be appointed constable before being elected constable by the voters of the Ojai Valley. In a time before the Ojai Police Department we know today, Constable Hunt kept the valley safe. Then came the fateful day of March 11, 1943. A fugitive from an asylum for the criminally insane in Northern California made his way to Ojai. He had been on the run for years, and when he got to the valley, he brought terror and violence. He attacked several women, and Constable Hunt made it his mission to find him. He gathered a posse, something that he was allowed to do in 1943. He tracked the man to Steckel Park. Constable Hunt knew this man had threatened to kill any officer who tried to capture him. But his mission and sworn commitment to protect the community was greater than the danger. He found the man. He chased him down a steep hillside. The man fired his gun and hit Constable Hunt. And that's when Constable Hunt fired back, killing the man. The threat to the Ojai Valley was over, and Constable Hunt was gravely wounded. He spent a few days in the hospital, but he felt a commitment to get back to work. So he did. And 6 weeks later, he died from complications of that bullet wound, leaving his wife, Lena, and 3 children under the age of 10. His death had a profound impact on the family. Young children who picked up paper routes to help their mom pay the bills. His eldest son, Harry, would eventually follow in his father's footsteps. He enlisted in the Marine Corps during the Korean War before becoming a lieutenant with the California Highway Patrol. The family knows the story of Constable Hunt, but it's not widely known by the community he protected. Renaming the jail for Constable Hunt, along with a plaque in his honor, which the Hunt family will pay for, will change all that. People touring the jail for decades to come will know the story of Constable Hunt. And his one surviving child, Harry, who still lives in Ojai with his wife, Vesta, along with generations of Hunt family members who never met Constable Hunt, will have a monument to a man who gave everything for the valley. Thank you for your time, and thank you for considering this request.
Great, thank you very much, Sarah. I just wanted to kind of walk through it a little bit. So this, the way I understand it, started with Sarah sending an email to the city, informing us of the events, informing us of the timeliness of this consideration, and that then was forwarded to me just because of the historical nature of it. The city did come together, and Mayor Sticks presented a proclamation. That proclamation is in your package, and that I believe that was given to Harry on his 90th birthday. And so I think I found a picture of that proclamation being presented on pictures on the city's website, or maybe on their Facebook page, and so I put that in one of the added items that was sent out by Mara last week. Yeah, everything that's come together. I will tell you also that I am involved in assisting in an event that's going to take place this next, on Memorial Day, down in Oakview, the famous Oakview Memorial Day Parade with our flyovers and everything else. And we have, and with the love and support of Nancy Hill, who is all things veterans, when I shared that with her, she wholeheartedly supported the decision that was made to have Harry Hunt be our Grand Marshal for that parade, for that Veterans Parade. I'm not sure if they're telling him these things along the way, so some of this may be a surprise. So, Harry, would you like to say something?
Well, I will say that
Yes.
I was,
Oh,
found out
Harry,
about
can you come to the podium? This is being recorded for posterity and TV, yes.
so I can be heard. Yeah, I only found out what you were considering here tonight, this afternoon, by my daughter finally cutting me in on it. I wasn't aware that the Historical Society was taking this matter into consideration. So my words will be short, but I'm overwhelmed with gratitude to you folks for considering my father and this honor that you're considering for him. And I don't have a lot to say about it, except that on behalf of the Hunt family, we're quite grateful. I can thank you for them, but I think my gratitude is a wee bit beyond words. I just appreciate the fact that you'd consider this. So, thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, questions to the commission? Yes, I'm sorry. Of course. Thank you, Mayor.
I just want to say this is such a great idea. And I had the opportunity to go to Harry's 90th birthday party at Soul Park and get to know the family, and they're just spectacular. And Harry is such an incredible example of someone who has given so much to our country, our community. And that story, Sarah, thank you. My heart is still pounding from that. It's quite gripping, and I think that it'd be great for kids in the future to know the story and know about the family. So I'm really happy that you're talking about this. So thank you, Commission. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. I know for the parade, because when we stop, I'm told Harry is setting up tables beforehand, coming down to do the parade, and then coming back in the afternoon to set up tables for a fundraiser?
Yes, the Ojai VFW has a program on that day as well at Libby Bowl. But I'll take time to get involved. Trust me, I can handle this.
Great, thank you. Yes, in this time and with Memorial Day coming up and, talking about what we're talking about, it was interesting. I did a search and Constable Harry Hunt came up. It was with the Officer Down Memorial page. And that had, I was talking with maybe Kimberly today, and that had a concise, I can tell you it was a .22 caliber pistol, and the embankment was 13 feet, things you learn when you're doing research. Does anyone have any questions then for Sarah or for Harry Hunt? Okay, so what we're talking about here is, with the information we have, is whether the commission would like to put in place recognition for Harry Hunt Sr. I will tell you, fortunately, I knew most of the stories because the proclamation kind of makes you wonder which Harry it's talking about. I love a little mystery. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's senior and that's junior. So I just wanted to have the discussion here on, you've heard thoughts, heard suggestions. Thoughts were initially in naming the jail. That would be, according to what I saw, the third name that it's had. The other suggestion was, and it was mentioned in Sarah's comments, in putting a plaque there. We have, every year we open up the jail on Ojai Day, and everybody comes and says, oh, I didn't know this was a jail. I appreciate that there's a landmark plaque out there, but it's like 4x4. It's pretty small. To me, having somebody not only be able to see year-round that is the Ojai jail, but also see somebody who died in the line of service clear back when that was more of a newer jail and a used jail, including I told the story about your father using it as a babysitter for you and your brother. So I brought this forward because I think it's important. I like to see recognition taking place. You know, I appreciate that David Mason's has a plaque there in the pergola that was done by the community and paid for by the community. I like the fact that we have the naming of the gym at Sarasota Park for a gentleman who essentially gave his life in putting that together. I haven't been over to see what the floor looks like, but I hear it needs resurfacing. Anyway, that's what I would thoughts I would. So I'd like to entertain other commissioners' questions, discussions.
I have a couple comments. Well, one is, what's the process to do the naming? We should make those next steps, but also naming the jail after Harry Hunt and creating a plaque with that story gives a historic landmark another depth, another dimension. And most of our public buildings that are landmark don't have that personal connection to Ojai, the people. But when you look at the landmark homes, there's always the story of the family that came here, how they built it, what they met, how they lived in the town and connected with each other. So I think that it's a really great way to connect the jail to the history of the community and the community moving forward. It gives it a personality. And that's really important for historic buildings because they're not just blocks and cement. They're the story of our town. They're the place. They're placemaking. So that's my feeling. I think it's a great idea.
Great, thank you. Other people? Yes, Craig.
Well, I definitely feel that Harry Hunt deserves all the recognition that we can give him. I spent the last week going back through every issue in newspapers.com, finding articles about Harry and reading up on him. And it even led me to go back and review every constable that we've had since 1873 when Andy Van Kuren became the constable. And believe me, it's been quite a mixed group of gentlemen who have served as constable. In fact, I wasn't really sure what a constable was before I started the search and realized that before the 1960s there was an actual region called the Nordoff Township that was changed to the Ojai Township.
Mr. Walker, can you speak a little bit closer to the mic, please?
I'm sorry, it was a section of Ventura County that had a judge and a constable. And the constable was elected by the people of Ojai Valley, and he kept the peace in the Ojai Valley. When the city formed in 1921, they had a marshal, and the marshal did numerous different police kind of activities, but a lot of it had to do with business licenses, economic stuff, traffic violations, but the heavy lifting was really done by the constable. And several times over the history, because the pay was so low, the constable also doubled as the marshal and served both positions at the same time. There was one time, the marshal also was responsible for the sewers and trash disposal in the city of Ojai. And the guy that came before Harry Hunt was a man named Peasley, and he was both the marshal and the constable. And the city council got a lot of complaints from the business owners who said he wasn't enforcing the city laws. And he says, it's hard to give a ticket to somebody making an illegal U-turn when you're having to look down the sewers all day. So anyway, he lost his job as the marshal, and they hired somebody else. There was another man that came after Mr. Hunt who actually quit because he said it was too much work to do both jobs, and he didn't want to have to look after the sewers and also the trash disposal in the city of Ojai. So anyway, I learned a lot about the whole constable system and the various constables we have. And believe me, in our small valley, Harry Hunt really stood out as a giant. And it was just amazing what he accomplished with his one arm, and was able to defend the people of Ojai with that. One article, a young man about 18 years old, he'd stopped him, and the man looked at him and then started to come for him. And then when he saw that Harry only had one arm, he hesitated for a moment because it kind of took him aback that this policeman only had one arm. And Harry said, "Go ahead and fight me. I've got more bullets in my gun to make up for my arm," you know. And the guy just stopped and he arrested him and took him back to the jail. So I'm all in favor of honoring Mr. Hunt, and I think something at the jail would be good. I'm still not quite renaming the historic landmark after a person. I just not sure about that as a precedent, because I know there's a lot of people who have other police officers in the valley who they admired. Officer Chamo Kwiata is somebody who's legendary in Ojai history, and Officer James Alcorn. So I'm just not sure that there might be people that will wonder why these other policemen their names weren't put on the jail. Also, would that happen with other landmarks where, say, the family of Alan Raines wanted the arcade to be named after him because his family goes back to the first store in the arcade? So I really would like to see some kind of a monument down there by the jail that honors those police officers who have fallen in action. It could be, I believe there were two, Harry Hunt, and there was Officer Peter Aguirre, who was a sheriff that was stationed in Ojai who died on duty. I know that Harry is on the such a monument in Washington, D.C., and also in Ventura, and I think it would be appropriate for Ojai to have such a plaque or monument that would honor him, or it could just be memorable police officers where someone like Officer Kwiata, who never drew, he told me once, "I never drew my pistol in the line of duty my whole career," and yet he made such an impact on the people of Ojai and the youth of Ojai. So something where officers like that could all be recognized down by the jail. To me, that would be something that would make more sense and would be something that would honor them, but not kind of open up a little bit of a can of worms, I'm afraid, with starting now to rename these various landmarks that we have. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments?
I have a comment, Craig. I think that's actually really thoughtful. And, I'd love to hear from the family too. But, I remember when Peter Aguirre was killed and, those former constables. And, you made me see a lot of different versions of this. And maybe it's some kind of plaque that honors all the constables until Ojai went to the Ventura County Sheriff's Department, the actual Ojai constables, and then the story of Harry and a separate, it could be something to bring in the Arts Commission to develop something on the little property around down there. I think it's a really good opportunity to work with the Arts Commission and maybe make that applicable to all these people who served in Ojai. And, and tell the story of Harry in its own specific location.
Gina?
I agree with what you said. It's not just a building, it comes to life when you tell these stories. And our history is all based on carrying these stories through, and especially to our young people. So I am agreeing that we definitely there should be a plaque and a story and a way of recognition. But if you think about 2023 and you go across the United States, it seems to be more of a time where people are on-naming buildings after people rather than naming. And it's there's a lot to it because it's a jail, because a lot of people may not have as good of memories. I know when I've sat there and I've had people come up and older gentlemen telling me that they had stayed there, and I asked for their story and they couldn't tell me. They didn't want to. And so I think that, we should respect the fact that it may not be a place of glory for some of the people who may have been part of that. And we don't know how other people that were part of our valley might have had relationships with law enforcement, like our indigenous people and our the Ojai Ranch people. And a lot of the stories that I read, like on Ojai history, there's a lot of like Chinese servants that were part of families that lived in Ojai, and I don't know how those people, their stories might differ or might come out. And then, not necessarily with this particular story in this family, this sounds amazing, the story sounds amazing, but just starting to name and recognize, and then having to backtrack if necessary, and having to absorb the good and the bad when you talk about law enforcement and you talk about a jail. So I think that there's place for recognition, and I don't think I'm really comfortable with the renaming, but I also don't know if it's our body that would do that. It seems to be more of maybe a democratic process to do something like that. I don't know if we have I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't know if it would be city council or
But
what.
city council would approve
Yeah.
it, yeah.
We're the ones that make the recommendation to city council. It
Got
is
it.
a landmark,
Like we do with everything else, yeah.
Yeah.
like we
Okay,
do with
thank you.
everything else. And
Those are valid points,
Yeah.
and if it's,
Yeah.
for instance, a list of the constables who served in Ojai from 1873, thank you, Craig, to 1940, blah, whatever, yeah. Yeah, just, these are the constables, and that, and then this is a separate Harry Hunt plaque that tells the story of, this unique personality and how that personality affected the town of Ojai or lived in Ojai. I think it's more of not putting up a picture of, or a statue of Robert E. Lee and saying, hail the conquering hero. It's about, these are the stories of the people here. It's not that they
Exactly.
were, heroes per se, in that sense that you're describing.
Yeah.
It's just that there was service to the community. They led colorful lives. They're interesting. And this is how Ojai, the personality of Ojai grew into what it is in a certain level, which is placemaking, really, Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Rick,
I would be remiss if I didn't add something, since I grew up here and knew a lot of the police officers in the 60s and 70s. I'm very much in favor of naming the jail after Harry Hunt, because he was such a remarkable individual. And I know what Craig is saying about setting a precedence, and maybe we just don't have to name everything after everybody. But one point too is as we get more and more newer people in Ojai, we actually kind of, I think, lose a little bit of our link to the past. And so by keeping some of these names alive, I think that's a really positive thing, however we might do it. I would also be remiss in saying that, if I didn't say that, as an 8-year-old, I spent some time in the jail when it was an actual jail. And I was very much impressed by it, because for my young nose, it was a particularly stinky place. And I went there with my Cub Scout den to visit it, because one of the boys in our Cub Scout group, his father was the police sergeant. So he was one of those luminary people who we're talking about, not Chummo, but Sergeant Clamser. And all those guys were pretty remarkable people. And mind you, I don't know if you all realize this, but now, as Cindy said, we get our police services from the sheriff's department, which is a county entity that the city, of course, pays for. But back then, it was the Ojai Police Department, and it was just within the city. And so the guys who were they were there for years. And like my wife's godfather was one of the chiefs, Vincent France, and I had a scoutmaster who was a cop, and that was Larry Bauer, who recently died. So all these guys they really gave, extracurricularly to the town and youth. And Chamo Quijada, he was a scoutmaster, and they just all, I think, made an impression on us growing up. So I like this idea of memorializing the police in our town. Thank you.
Okay, so there is one other public comment that came up.
So, I'm sorry, we actually didn't close the public
That's-
comment
yeah, I was
period
about
and
to
then
say.
go into not necessarily
Discussion.
deliberation, but discussion, exactly. But I think we can consider it having been closed, and now you'll need to reopen it, I think, officially.
Yep.
If you're going to have somebody speak.
Yeah, so I got away from my notes up there. Okay, so Larry Steingold.
Thank you. Larry Steingold, resident, 6 years as of May 11th, actually. I want to hear about Harry Hunt. I have no history about Ojai. And there are no heroes without damage and without breaking eggs. So unless we're going to take down all the statues, we can't keep nitpicking. Whatever happens, but Harry Hunt gave his life. I don't know anything about Harry Hunt other than what I heard here. All right, but he gave his life defending the city of Ojai. Now, granted, we don't know all the cops that are here because they come in and they go out, but Harry Hunt lived here. His family's here. They're still here. They may be here forever. Who knows? Well, hopefully. Right? But I mean, he gave his life. So name the jail after him. Okay, name it after the other gentleman who died on duty. Okay, I mean, name all sorts of things. That's the history of the people here. That's your history. All right, you have the right to name anything you want after people. In Rhode Island, they name things and then they change them. Okay, they named an airport after Harry Truman's bagman and then they gave it to somebody else. Okay, and then they keep changing names because people donate things. But it's okay to change names because 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, but name it after Harry Hunt. He gave his life. That's worth something.
Great, thank you, Larry. Alex, anyone on Zoom that popped up?
No one's raising their hand, sir. No.
Okay, great. Okay, then we'll close public comments. Is that what you're leaning forward for? No?
No, that's not why I was leaning forward, but I was leaning forward in anticipation of, in case there are things on my mind that I wanted, if they're not said, I was going to say.
Okay, what would you like to say?
Well, like I was going to wait to hear if they were said, but
I think we're done
you're done.
setting.
So moving forward, it would have to be a consensus of the commission.
Yep.
And then there's probably some more information or more details that would need to be put together before going to the council. And then there are two ways of getting there. One is to get everything together, and I think, plaques, signs, all the constables, only Harry Hunt, on the building, off the building, whatever the details are, we don't have those, or you don't have those yet. And so more information, and then again, is it the wish of the full commission? And then it's either taken to or sent through staff to the commission to be put on an agenda at some point, and we'd be looking at a ways from now, perhaps. And then the other method is to, again, get it together, but then take it to the meeting that's between the HPC and the city council. What is that called again?
Joint
Thank
meeting.
you, joint, that word. Joint meeting that may be coming up in June. So, which was something that was acknowledged in your packet. I forget which item number. And so I don't know if the commission would be ready by then. Anyway, there's wrapping up to do, and there's a lot. It seems like there's more to do before it even gets to council, if in fact it's something that the commission as a whole wants to move forward with.
Okay, thank you.
I have a comment, and I don't know if the family has any thoughts after hearing our discussion, because you had such a thoughtful presentation, and your father was in law enforcement, so I think you have a general idea about that outlook and how he would maybe respond to some of our conversation tonight. And I wasn't aware of what Craig was going to point out about the other constables, and, a super thoughtful presentation. I didn't know if you wanted to share any thoughts or if you have any thoughts about what we've been discussing.
Kimberly, did you want to say? You need to come to the mic.
Going to come up?
We are just very grateful that you're considering this, and I think it's wonderful. In some way, you've talked about recognizing the Constable Harry Hunt. That recognition would mean that the story isn't lost in time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really what's at stake here, is if this story is lost in time. So we are really, truly grateful that you're considering and just recognizing him in some way, whether that's a separate recognition plaque or however that you would think that would look. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Okay. So I guess the question for me is, because I'm ready to make a motion, is to have that motion for two separate issues or for one combined issue. And so I'd like to split those two up and make a motion that we, I understand there are several people over the decades so I would like to make a motion that we, and again, the action that we take today, we talked about this morning, a second meeting would need to take place. If a plaque passes, we would work and get that language together and bring that language back to the HPC at the next meeting, and so that it could be reviewed and then passed on to City Council. So I think there's at least that second step is what I see. So I would like to make a motion that we go ahead and recommend to the City Council a plaque at the jail. Again, remember, two different things to talk about. A plaque at the jail that recognizes Constable Harry Hunt for his ultimate sacrifice of his life in protection of the residents here, and something that will go on the jail and attract to the jail and enhance that, so people recognize it year-round as the jail it is, rather than thinking it's a bathroom and they can't find out how to get in, which is what we often hear. I think it would also engender additional remembrances. I joked when we were hearing about the babysitting going on that we were always happy to find a new use for the jail that took place years ago. So I would like to make a motion that we go forward in creating a plaque that would honor Constable Harry Hunt, and that it be placed on the outside of the jail.
I would second that. I think that every year that I've sat outside of the Ojai jail and Ojai Day, people are thirsty for stories. They want to know. They don't just want to see the building. And even going inside, and they take their selfies and their pictures, but they want to know, like, who stayed here? What's the longest time they stayed here? Why did they stay? They're so thirsty for that. So I think having this really beautiful and intense story on the jail would give them something that would be lasting, and it would live on, and that I think is important. So I would second that.
You want to put a plaque on the jail but not rename the jail?
Well, I was going to do that as a second item.
Okay.
I just made them into two.
Yeah.
I thought, I didn't know how big of a bite it would be, so I figured I'd go for 2 bites.
I think a couple more details might be good before wrapping this first motion up. Like, are you at the chair going to come up with the language, and then everyone will, and then it'll be on the next agenda, and it'll be in the next packet for everyone to review and then discuss?
Yes, yeah, that's what I was just saying.
Okay, and then also, are you looking to get this, I think getting to the council faster, or the fastest way, is probably going to the joint meeting, or taking this to the joint meeting, which is probably going to get you there faster than getting on an open spot on a future agenda.
You think?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, no.
So
We were
it's-
talking about that this morning, and I've been at the council meetings and heard James talk about, the next 7 councils are booked. So
and-
I think that's,
And I don't
yeah,
think that
good.
that probably doesn't have to be decided on right now, but if you are thinking about getting the language together, then it would be decided which one of you is going to get the language together, and then it'll be in the next packet.
Yeah, so my thought was that I would continue to get the language together. I love the stories that Craig brought. I guess I had to keep my newspapers.com archive for family history. So my plan was to suggest that I would get the verbiage together, working with the family who I've stayed in close contact with, even though Harry didn't know about that. So that's the going step forward, is to have that something in place and set up and proposed at the next HPC meeting in June. I'm not sure. I didn't see the part where there was a date for the joint meeting.
There's not a specific date, but in this packet, I think it might be item number 5. I'm not sure. I'd have to look. It does say give an approximate time.
Oh, okay.
And
So it
so-
would be probably after our meeting next month.
You'll have April, May. Yeah, like I said, there isn't a specific date, but we can close this one up and.
Okay. So that's the motion. We have a second. Alex, could you call roll, please?
Walker,
Yes.
Bisaccia,
Yes.
Akins,
Yes.
McHatton,
Yes.
Convery.
Yes.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. So the second motion that I'd like to make is that we that's I think he already has one of these. 5?
Sorry, I should have
Okay.
interrupted.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was just trying to figure out the numbering. Okay, so my second motion is that we go ahead and rename the jail to recognize Harry Hunt. Again, that is a recognition that comes to him both on the information that we've provided today, as well as thinking about the timeliness of the jail. When he was the constable, it wasn't the relic that it is today. It was an active part of the community. It talks about in one of the stories, I'm not sure if it's the one that Harry wrote about his father, that he would pick somebody up that was a little tipsy. He would walk them over to the jail for the night, lock them up, and come back in the next morning with a cup of coffee and send them on their way home. So that would be my second motion, is that we, as an HPC, recommend renaming the jail to recognize Harry Hunt Sr. And so, any seconds on that?
I'll second it.
Okay, so discussion on that. Any discussion on that before we go to a roll call?
I'd like to spend more time on Craig's idea to have a different approach to the jail.
Okay,
Well, I would just like to say too that when the Thomas fire happened.
Mr. Walker, can you speak into the mic?
What's he saying?
speak into the mic. Your mic's on. There we go.
The firefighter memorial at the Y was erected in 1985 after the 1985 fire that honors all the firefighters in the Ojai Valley. During the Thomas fire, There was one Corey Iverson who died in the Thomas Fire, and many people in Ojai wanted to see him honored for his service in the line of, and dying in the line of duty. So we put the plaque on a rock next to the main one and the main firefighter memorial, because it doesn't detract from the integrity of what that is, but it gives him his own plaque. And so every time I drive by, I see that little plaque to Corey Iverson. It reminds me of him and his sacrifice. So I think something like that, I'm not opposed to it going actually on the jail itself. I think that would be very appropriate. As people walk around, they can see it, and maybe we could even add others if they come up and we feel that they deserve to be put on it. So I that's the approach. But
Okay, yep.
it could even be a separate one, like you say, honoring, or there could be something down there, could even be different from all of this, that honors the constables and what that system was.
Yeah,
Can
yeah,
I- can
you're
I make a
talking about the
comment?
plaque.
Because, because this discussion brought up these new ideas, I'd really like to have more time about, exploring
naming.
this in the community, talking to a couple of people I know in law enforcement. I think Peter Gary's family might still be here, I think they had a young child or two when he was shot. So, just sort of see how the community has any ideas about, in general, approaching a landmark building that honors everybody that was involved in a
Okay.
way that we can do that with a Harry Hunt story that brings in that personal, history and keeps the story alive. I think we can make it work for everybody.
Okay, so, yeah, again, so the plaque has been approved. We were talking about the naming of the building, so I will withdraw my motion then, and then we can talk about that at the next meeting when we're reviewing the language on the plaque, if that sounds.
Is that okay, Maura, that we move this discussion to,
Absolutely. We'll put the discussion on the next agenda for the renaming of the jail.
Okay,
Keep
but
these
in
two
the
things
meantime, we'll be working on presenting the language and the plaque at that meeting. Okay,
Yes, I got it.
okay. I think we are done for the moment with that item. So we want to thank the Hunt family. We want to thank Sarah, who may still be on Zoom, for her contributions, for her initial email. And thank you for being here. I look forward to seeing you on Memorial Day. And Harry, I think you had a show and tell that you wanted to share.
Short one?
The show and tell, he asked you to bring the.
Oh, the show and tell.
Yes, so if you,
I'll be happy to.
yeah, if you could just come forward and share what a Purple Heart
Yeah, I was asked
Warren.
to bring these items, so I will show them to you. They're things that my father, I've kept from him. This was his cap. This was the Ojai post at the time of the Veterans of Foreign Wars. And he had his Army 3rd Division patch on there, which I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, I'll be glad to show you these. This was his Purple Heart, which he was awarded for being gassed in France. And it has his name on it. And that was, of course, issued by the Army. Well, he was in World War I. He enlisted in 1917. And at the part of his first service in 1917 was that war that started in 1912, I believe, and went to 1919, which was the border war. And he was awarded for a service in the border war. And then later went to France in World War I. And in France, he must have gotten there at the latter part of the French battle, because he was awarded a Medal for Service in the Second Battle of the Marne River, that's like the Battle of the Bulge in World War II. So the Germans were attempting to push the Allies out in the ocean and send them home. That was the end. They first had two. In other words, there was 2 times they had to take that because the Germans always came through the Ardennes, and they did it twice in both wars. So he was awarded service with the Army's 3rd Division in the Battle of the Marne. I understand he was an artilleryman in there. So that just about.
Well, thank you, Harry.
Show and tell anyway.
Hey,
Thanks.
Yeah,
we had the opportunity, had the opportunity to see in my case,
Yeah.
Hold a Purple Heart.
It's just I'm sure it was an interesting time for him.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for all your considerations, and appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for
Thank you
bringing
for being
us.
here. And thank you, Sarah.
In my search, I found an article in the Starfree Press about Harry Jr. winning an award for the Paper Boy of the Year or something like that for the Starfree Press. You were 13 years old, I think.
It started when he was 9.
Oh, my goodness, that man does a lot of research.
He does. He does. Okay, we are moving on to which next item? Again, thank you. Item number 3 coming up.
Thank you, Chair Akins. Item number 3 is discussion of the history of the Matilaha Junior High School. This agenda item is an opportunity for the commission to discuss the history of the Matilaha Junior High School. The junior high school sits on over 16 acres of land shared with several of the Ojai Unified School District structures. And I'm going to open it up to you to have your discussion of the history. Thank you.
Okay. Your family is welcome to stay and join us, or you can go out and eat that dinner that I thought I heard you were going to enjoy tonight. So there you go. Again, thank you for being here. Kimberly, thank you for driving up.
Yeah, thank you.
Such an honor, and we are overwhelmed. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry.
Item number
So
3.
that's item number 3.
Okay.
And this is an opportunity for the Historic Preservation Commission to discuss the history of the Matilaha Junior High School.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for staff?
I have a question. There has, no?
Sorry, I should have said that along with that very brief staff report that I just read, we do have an attachment in your packet that was provided by Mr. Craig Walker prior to his being on the commission, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. There you go.
I was just wondering if the city has a copy of the HRR report that might have been, there is one on this property, correct? Is that?
We've heard that there is. I'm in contact with the president of the board, and so that's one of the questions that I will ask him.
So staff has done a search and has not found it. We don't know if it was submitted to us.
Okay.
So whether it's hard copy or and electronic, we have not been able to
I
locate
don't want
one.
to double up work if we have an HR, I'd like to.
Absolutely. So if it can be found out in the world, that's by the commission, that's great.
There was, what drew my attention to it is there was in the board packet for the school board a discussion of the bond projects at Matilaha Junior High. This was before they did their new cafeteria. And they had commissioned a historic report to be done on the property. And that was part of the packet. And I read through it, and I took issue with quite a bit of it, which is why I wrote this up. That was the beginning of this, was to send to the school board as my objection to what I thought was incomplete and not very thoroughly done, researched report on the history of the school and their conclusions that they came to. At the time, I was sick, and so I didn't even get my letter into the school board, and I lost track of which meeting it was that this report had been in. So I couldn't find it on my hard drive, and I couldn't remember enough to be able to go and find it online. So it is there. They must have it somewhere in the school district office. So it would, I think, be important for this group to take a look at what those people saw and then to go through and kind of think about it in terms of the whole history that we know of it, to get a clear picture. Because sometimes people get a company that may not even come to Ojai. They may just do a review of it and certainly not talk to people at the museum or anything like that. So I think it would be important that we find that to go along with anything I've said here.
Okay, great. Thank you, Greg. Maura, at what point in this process do I get to share information to clarify some of the things that are have been relayed? Is that prior to public comments or after the public comments?
I'm not sure what you're referring to. However, in my, again, very brief staff report, and then acknowledging the attachment, we also have received comments from 2 members of the public, and they are provided online in your packet.
We have it?
Well,
We have it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
When were they provided in our packet?
well,
Jerry
I
Akins, can
got
you turn
this
on
in
your
an
mic?
email from you.
okay.
Yeah, they were sent.
They came in an email blind copy, and I'm sorry, excuse me, Alex?
Oh, just making sure, Jerry Akins, you can turn on your mic when you talk.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Alex, are copies of the email that I'm talking about on our electronic website or in our available to the public, and are they also on the table?
They're not on the table, but I believe they're on the website.
Okay, so they're on the public website.
Should be, yes.
I'm looking at it.
Oh, okay. Well,
Can I address this? The emails that you're talking about were not submitted as public comments. They were emailed specifically to a person saying, can you move this off the agenda? Both of them basically said the same thing, but they weren't submitted as public comments.
Thank you, Commissioner. Correct. They were submitted to staff. Well, actually, they were submitted to staff asking to detail what the item is about.
Yeah, something
And
like that, yeah.
the director responded that it's about discussing the history and guided them to the website or to the link for the public packet or the packet for the meeting.
So I think the confusion, Brian, is that these aren't public comments. They were emails to staff
okay.
with,
Thank you.
process questions.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I remember those. Sorry, we've had interrupted power, scheduled power outage. Okay. Yeah, so at some point, I'm going to take time to clarify and educate on what the role of the Historic Preservation Commission is, as well as what this item is on our agenda for tonight because of one word that was included in Craig's comments that we grabbed as kind of a history type thing. The world has gone a bit crazy. And that was not to suggest anything that we were doing. So tonight is solely just to us doing our job in understanding the history of certain locations within the city of Ojai. So I just wanted to elaborate on that a bit. I just needed to know when to do that, either before public comments or after.
Before.
Well, I think you can elaborate on my quote-unquote staff report and talk about what you're doing tonight, and then open up public comments, and then close public comments, and then have your discussion.
Okay, So I will elaborate. I have been on the phone. I found out about this morning. What took place, I guess, at the school board meeting last night. I did not. I've been monitoring remotely what's going on the school board. I'll just leave it at that. I have not been involved in the school board. Let me just, all of these things are in the city code, the municipal code. There's a lot of good information in there. Folks might want to look at it before they cast their aspersions. For example, section 4-8.01 title says that this chapter shall be known as the Historic Preservation Law. Section 4-8.02 purpose. The purpose, again, this is Title 4 is Public Welfare, Morals, and Conducts. Chapter 8 is Historic Preservation Law. 4-8.02, the purpose of this chapter is to promote the economic and general welfare of the city by preserving and protecting council-approved and designated landmarks. Again, let me point, council-approved, not HPC-approved. We only make recommendations. Council-approved and designated landmarks, historic districts, structures of merit, and points of historical interest. So there's more than just a landmark. As defined in this chapter, in consistency with the conservation element of the general plan, be they of public or private ownership, and having a special historical, cultural, or aesthetic character or interest. All this in order to preserve the historic, architectural, cultural, and natural heritage of the city, and to make the citizens of the city and visitors to the city mindful of this heritage. It is the city's intent that the preservation of its landmarks, historic districts, structures of merit, and points of historic interest be guided by the Secretary of the Interior standards and guidelines for the historic and for the treatment of historic properties as adapted to the particular and best interests of the city. Definitions, because one of the things, as I'm getting to this, I want to go back to your notes. The 5-page addendum that was put in as supporting information for this in the staff report was I knew of this. I reached out to Craig Walker because I knew that Craig had a wealth of information as regards the Matilaha Middle School. Craig was not a commissioner. He was sworn in yesterday. And he had been in an ad hoc committee. And so I asked Craig if he had anything. He provided this document. That was an update to something that he had done earlier. In that document, it says at the very beginning, the old Nordhoff High School Historic District. And then it says the proposed historic district includes the Mission Revival complex of buildings. I got a text message from a reporter that said, how come you haven't taken this proposal to the school district? Don't you think you ought to take it to the school district? And I said to that person, there is no proposal. I have no idea what you're talking about. And then I heard, got text message, it is a proposal. There is a proposal. It says right here, the proposed historic district. I talked with this person. I talked with the president of the school board, and I said, what would you have Craig say? The existing historic district, the alleged historic district, or, the proposed historic district? If we ever do a historic district, it would move beyond maybe the suggested historic district. But because Craig used the word proposed, all of a sudden, social media was saying, the HPC has added it again.
It wasn't social media, it's the Ojai Valley News.
That too. Although in deference to let me get to the Ojai Valley News. Yeah, no, that's fine. So let me read. This is section 4-8.04, definitions. Historic district. Historic district, and I said to them, I said this to Atticus over there when I talked to him. I said, actually, I didn't even see the word proposed because I was concentrating on historic district. I'm like, wait, isn't this just a school? Why do we have a historic district? And Craig actually modified the wording a little bit, because if you hadn't figured it out yet, Craig Walker is extremely precise. And so he made an adjustment to that. I told him I didn't even notice the word proposed because I was concentrating on that. But historic district, again, that section, historic district means an area designated as a historic district by ordinance of the council, and which may contain within definable geographic boundaries one or more landmarks, and which may have within its boundaries other properties or structures that, while not of such historic and or architectural significance to be designated as landmarks, nevertheless contribute to the overall visual characteristics of the landmark or landmarks located within the historic district. And historic district is identified in reference to its historically and architecturally significant character defining elements. Sometimes things are historic because they're old. So I know that that's old because my father-in-law, who was born in Fillmore in 1925 and whose family moved to Miners Oaks in the late 1920s, went to school there. He went to school, first he went to the Nordhoff Grammar School, and then he went to the Matilaha, which was then the Nordhoff Grammar School. I've interviewed over 40 different individuals here within the Ojai Valley. We joke that and we did an oral history interview with Harry Hunt. We just did one with Ed Winnig's daughter, Patty Atkinson, who I found out was a classmate with my wife because she went there. But, and I was joking about this with Atticus, that you found out if you were running east to west, you went left because the field sloped. And Atticus said, I've got a story on that one too. So great stories out there. But historic district, you go on and look through the code. Evaluation, the function and powers of the Historic Preservation Commission shall be item A, evaluation. Our job is to, and I'll close with this, the Historic Preservation Commission this is 4-8.05. The Historic Preservation Commission or Community Development Director may investigate any structure in the city which the council or planning commission or Historic Preservation Commission has reason to believe should be declared a historic landmark, historic district, structure of merit, or a point of historic interest.
I'd also like to add that the administrative report and the agenda are specific in stating that the HPC tonight is discussing the history of the Matilaha Junior High School.
Yes, we are. Thank you very much. And so our purpose for being here tonight is solely to find out, to discuss and understand the history of that and bring together what stories we have in understanding that. So thank you for that clarification. I think we're ready to take public comments. And so I'd like to open public comments. I have multiple cards here. Mr. Starkweather has 2 cards with 2 numbers. I have no idea. So we are on number 3? Yes. Yeah. So, yes, Jeffrey, if you'd come to the mic, please.
Thank you for that clarification. I am aware of the laws and provisions of the code related to historic districts. And I'm glad you are discussing history because as a 1965 graduate of there, one of the last ones, Craig's a year behind me, we had one of the named people here, Ms. Fukasawa, which was one of the most remarkable math teachers you ever get. I didn't realize their history, which was great to hear. Now, I was a little surprised and upset that Craig and I weren't listed as some of the great graduates. That's a joke. I did see the proposed, so I reacted that, or that's why I came, because when you start discussing the history and thinking about, you just mentioned 3 alternatives, I think it would be a major mistake to even consider making the old Nordhoff, current Matilaha, a part of the historic district and make it a historic. It's not really part of downtown. It's on a sub street. Besides, The school board has had this in their control for 100 years, and they've maintained the history of it. I think they are as equally concerned about the historic preservation of that as this commission or anybody else in the community. And there's a lot of Noroff graduates from that time and later who would be concerned about that. So I would be against going in that direction. Secondly, I think that before we even move to that direction, I think this should be a request from the school system if they want it. You know, this is different than Chaparral because that was a downtown street. And by the way, that was done over the opposition of the school district. But this is not. So I think if they want that kind of protection, they should ask for it. But remember, this is it's no longer a school right now. It's going to be empty because they're not doing one of the new schools there. And they need the flexibility because they may be using it for all kinds of purposes. They may put housing on there. So I would be against restricting them by making them part of any historic district. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey, but that's not what we're doing tonight. Yes, Gina, did you want to comment on the extending the historic district?
I just wanted to ask Craig, and this is not part of the local downtown historic district. This is because of the size that you're talking about, it being its own district? Is that?
The only reason that I used the word district was because often when you have a site that's multiple buildings, it's comes under a historic, it can be named a historic district instead of a landmark, but this is a separate property and wouldn't be
Completely
part-
separate from the downtown historic district.
Right.
Yes.
Just want to make that clear, nothing
Very.
to do with it.
So that's been clarified now to the, to Mr. Starkweather, who mentioned it being included in a downtown historic district. It would be a separate.
It would be a
if-
separate.
If
in
that's
fact,
where you were even going.
We
But-
should
clarify.
We should probably
I
just.
used that,
excuse
but I'm
me.
against any historic designation district for the school. So
We should
Thank you.
just call it, we should refer to it as a landmark, because I can see that the district thing was maybe a little confusing,
And I
but
think landmark, just using the word landmark is jumping ahead because we're only talking about the history of the site tonight. Thanks.
Exactly,
Exactly.
which is why I corrected the minutes to talk about the history. And again, please don't come to the mic unless you're invited. And second of all, that's not what we're talking about. We are only talking about what we're trying to do and is learn about the history of that site. As for other comments that have been made, let's go to Larry now, and then we'll address them all together.
I was actually coming here because of the potential designation of it being a historical site. But this is just a prelude. Eventually, the arbolata, eventually the history of all that all gets tied in. And the buildings are old, and they were built by well-reputable architects and people of the valley. So it does have a historical significance for the people who are here. This is part of your history, it's not mine. I mean, mine started 6 years ago, all right? So you need to keep this history. That's part of the history. And if the history of the story shall continue. I don't want to start getting, but that's what the history is. I mean, you don't want to lose that. I mean, buildings, if they're old, just get redeveloped internally. I mean, again, I come from a state where the houses are 1,700 and they're plaques houses, and there are people living in them, and there are buildings, and there are businesses, high-tech buildings in these historical buildings. They just look old, all right? And the land, the 16 acres has historical significance for the town because everybody in town plays there, and that's really the only place in town that's really large enough to have public functions of any note. Sarzati's too small, okay? So it's historically a center of the town for town meetings and center activities for the town. Ojai Days could be held there also. In fact, it should be part of it. And the Arbolata is historical to some extent, and that's eventually, hopefully, will become some sort of historical district, and this can get tied to that. The whole town is historical to some extent, so keep it that way. And that's the history of continuing.
Great. Thank you very much, Larry. Atticus Reyes, please. And share with us who you are.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and
it's
what your position is.
absolutely a lot different being at the podium than at the dais. Thank you, Chair Akins and Commissioners. My name is Atticus Reyes. I'm trustee to the school district as of fall 2022, and as of the last month, board president. So we've had a lot of change. I'm sure everyone's been following it or hearing about it at least. I grew up in Ojai, Nordhoff graduate of 2015, and had a privilege to go to Cal State Challenge and study history. That's my love. So I always love hearing about history. That's what I wanted to come here to hear about. Before politics, I said I always wanted to be a high school United States history teacher at Nordhoff. So, but politics happened, and now I'm in that field. I know we talked, Chair Akins, this morning about the history of Matilla. It's absolutely filled with history. My stepfather, Michael Vale, graduated Nordhoff in 1968, played on the football team. He talks about that football field and how you would try to tackle or get tackled by the sprinklers so you could get a sip of water because they didn't give you water back then. So we know there's a lot of history in this field. And his mother, Shirley Vale, talks about how they used to play drums in the 40s at that old school when it was then Nordhoff High School. So we know there's a lot of rich history on that site. And I know you highlighted it well, Chair Akins, and we talked about this morning. There's already a lot of conversations about this agenda item, a lot of either misconceptions or assumptions or anything in between, right? And I really appreciate that. I'm only speaking on behalf of myself. I should have started that originally. The board has not taken any position because, as you clarified, there is nothing to take a position on, right? So I'm just coming here as myself, and my attempt is to try to just turn down the temperature a little bit and recommit to, I think, what we've tried to say at the school board is, what we hear so much is this narrative that in our small valley, the school board and the school district and the city are oftentimes at odds and don't work together and don't like each other and have really bad history. And I can't speak for all of our board members, and we'll be bringing on 2 new board members soon, but I can share that I really do believe that we want to repair that relationship. And we want to work together and change cultures. We're changing a lot at the school district. Cultures is one of them as well, and that culture of collaboration with the city. So this is not me coming here to pressure or intimidate. That's none of this. I came here because I wanted to learn about the discussion that you all are having, not only as someone who cares a lot about this community, who has an interest in the school district, but also as a student of history, because we know this site has a lot of history. So I'm excited to hear about this discussion, and the last thing that I'll just refer to, Chair Akins, what we talked this morning is maintaining these lines of communication open. What we find so much in our society right now is folks jump so quick because there's just not strong forms of communication in between. And what we find is when we have those good open lines of communication, we find that what we assumed was happening, or even just frank, unintentional miscommunications, misunderstandings about the process. Government's already complicated, so I think folks maybe didn't know, are things happening tonight, or is this the beginning of a process? All that in between. I work in government, so I know government's complicated, but I just want to highlight that as keeping these lines of communication open, so that way there is no confusion. And then when you have those gaps of confusion, you have access to either disinformation or just unintentional misinformation. And that's what I just wanted to say today is bringing down the temperature. Always happy to communicate with you all and work with you all on anything, and just want to hear this discussion. It should be a good one. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Yes.
I'd like to just respond to that. First of all, I really have to say I've taught at Nordhoff for 23 years, and I taught at Matilla for 4 or 5 years. So I'm very familiar with the campuses, but I just really appreciate what you and the other board members are doing there. It's just amazing the way you've dedicated yourselves to turning the place around, and I know the community really appreciates everything that you guys are doing. And I heard Mr. Monchars's comments last night about that we should come before you and talk to you about things before we do them, and I really appreciate that, but I think it's a two-way street as well, because the school district has been working on renovating the buildings downtown at various campuses, and yet I don't believe they've ever once brought any of their proposals before the HPC, just as a courtesy to say, these are the kind of changes we're thinking of making to these buildings. Do you have any input? Is there something that you think we could do that would help to make these more keep in with the spirit of the history of the buildings? So I agree there should be communication, and I hope that happens. I think it needs to be both ways, and hopefully we can get some visits from the bond managers to let us know in advance what's being planned. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I'll repeat this because I just mentioned it with Atticus when I talked to him today. We have encountered each other in different locations at different events, and so I've got to know him. We were talking about how popular his first name is becoming. So when we were interfacing with the Nordhoff Grammar School, its historic name, I went to every single school district meeting there was. I announced myself as who I was at those meetings. I didn't, sneak in a different garb, and was there and made myself available for any questions they may have had during that whole process. I came to every city council meeting that had anything to do with this project. I went to the hello, Kathy. I went to the Bill and Souza independent meeting. Not sure how they did that, but I went to that. So yes, as I told Atticus, I am happy to show up at the next school district meeting, introduce myself, all of the school board people, the last two that were there when I went before just resigned recently. Otherwise, they would remember those things. So yes, we as a commission, I as an individual, are happy to answer questions, happy to do whatever we can to educate folks. And it's the fact that this came, when I finally figured out, because I was doing this little exchange with Kimberly, and I'm like, she's like, yeah, no, it's right there. I'm like, so I went back like with a microscope and went word by word and it was right at the beginning. So of course I missed it. So again, we are not doing a proposal. We are learning about the history of an item because as I read the different sections of the municipal code, that's what we're put here for. I will open up public comments just one more time and ask Kathy Smith if you would like to make comments. I will tell you that I know Kathy quite well, and she was very involved when we were all trying to carefully tread forward.
And that's why I think you can see how some people, including myself, felt like this was the introduction to a deja vu moment. The Ojai School District property on Ojai Avenue was, I believe, the first time the Historic Preservation Committee dedicated a property or recommended to the city council, and then the city council declared a portion of it to be historic without the owner's initiation of the application in the first place. And so when I saw this, I was worried. I did, of course, know that it was only discussion, that there were not going to be any recommendations made tonight. However, that could be part of your discussion, that you recommend sending it to the city council. And that does cause us concern. I was also concerned about the language, because as we know, words are powerful. And for the document to propose this to be a historic district felt to me like it was giving more weight to the process instead of simply suggesting that portions of the property or certain buildings be examined. So yes, it was concerning. It was unfortunate. I think it might have been a good practice for the commission to have reached out to the superintendent or the board, just as a courtesy to let them know this was even on the agenda. As to a couple things Craig said, I don't recall the district ever paying for a historic report on the Matilaha property. I don't recall that being part of the bond process, but I certainly will look into it and look for it. And as far as the school district reaching out to the Historic Preservation Commission when they complete repairs or modifications to buildings, there are no other buildings that are within the Historic Preservation Commission's purview. So I'm not sure why they would do that. Because those are not properties that you review. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kathy can confirm, because she was Andy Cantwell's doorkeeper, that I spent over 2 meetings, over 2 days. I keep thinking it's 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours with Andy going through all of this and discussing everything.
Brian and I have known each other for years.
Yes. Yes. Her mother is one of my most special friends. Okay.
I want to ask Alex if there's anyone in Zoom that wants to speak to this item.
No, I believe Kathy Smith was the one who had her hand raised, but she's in the dais.
Great.
Thanks.
So one other thing I want to bring up, and this came out in a discussion that I had this morning when I was finding out there were comments that I heard that were made by board members that said we contacted, it almost inferred as though they contacted the commission or contacted the commission secretary, Mr. De Silva. I didn't really pay attention to Alex's last name until I saw that. I now know that it's Alex De Silva. I never knew anything about what took place until I got the text this morning. But in talking with Lucas, in going through this with Lucas this morning and Mara, Lucas did say that he notified the city last Monday at 8:00 a.m. that this was on our agenda item. So.
I'm sorry, have you closed the public hearing before not deliberating?
I did. I opened it just briefly to have
Okay.
Kathy.
Thank you, and it's closed again. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. Okay. So I do appreciate, I just wanted to add one thing. We talked about the Ojai Valley News. If you're looking for updates, the story put together by Kimberly Rivers throughout the day, because I texted her throughout the day, is a good reference for some of the things that have been taking place. And I wholeheartedly endorse looking at that. And that's why we have a small town paper. And I wholeheartedly support it. So yes, sorry, I've taken this up, but it
So
was sensitive.
can we have commissioner discussion?
Yes, please.
A couple things, just to start, that, this is a process, and most people don't understand government process in great detail, as in, this is a discussion item, which means we don't take action. We can't recommend it to city council. This discussion, which I've been requesting for quite a while, was based on the Chaparral experience, and I'll get into that in a minute. But it's just on here to talk about whether or not Matilaha is valid as a landmark. What's the history? Craig had done this history, which is why we have his notes attached to this. So he submitted it to us to have it as a discussion item to see what Matilaha is all about, and whether we would want to put that on another agenda item as an action item where we would recommend it to city council. So we can't do anything tonight except talk about it and listen to you. So that's what tonight is about. I think about, maybe 10 days ago, I asked Brian, and we just talked about calling the Ojai Valley News, calling Kimberly Rivers to do a story about it. I'm really glad that happened, because I have to choose my words carefully. It doesn't matter because I'll be misquoted, but the story that came out was so bizarre, I mean, the agenda says discussion item, discuss the history of Matilaha. If you work at the news, that's a no action item, so nothing's going to happen. It's a discussion item. And I was hoping that in the article, it would be reviewed as what it is, which is a discussion item and not a proposal. And, this kind of journalism really doesn't move Ojai forward, and we've seen it quite a while. So it's really disappointing. But what it did do was rock the boat with the school district, get everybody up in arms, and bring everybody out, which is great too, because now we can clear the air, and hopefully further articles about this won't have, comments about how we were contacted before the meeting, which we never were. This kind of thing doesn't really, as I said, move our city forward. So, I think what's happening tonight is a really great experience for Ojai to in very early days, clear the air, and in very early days, engage with the school board and try to look back at what happened with Chaparral. And Atticus, you weren't part of the school board at that time, so it was a really interesting process, and Kathy will have, other thoughts. But when Chaparral was finally landmarked, they were already down the road on a proposal that wasn't really appropriate for the site. And there were, there were a lot of things going on, and the people that were involved in that proposal have since left Ojai, and then new people came into the school board who have also since left. So maybe they weren't the right fit, for that property to create a property that really serves the community. And, something will happen with Chaparral, but to be determined, obviously. Matilaha, as was mentioned in one of the comments, has always, doesn't need to be designated because it's always been protected as a school. But the conversation is, will Matilaha continue to be a school? So it really is a question of going forward, putting these situations in place where we can understand what this property means to the town and how it should move forward with the town, how it should be developed. Yes, it can be used for housing. I had a meeting with a former school board member, who I won't mention, and a low-income housing developer from LA who was extremely well-respected about creating teacher housing at Chaparral and how that would look in a proposal. But it was in the middle of the debacle with the hotel. So, there are so many things you can do with adaptive reuse. I don't think the school board, to my knowledge, has expertise in historical development. I wouldn't imagine why you would. But I think that's something to really dig into, and maybe in a joint meeting, how that looks, because there are so many really incredible opportunities for community. And you can look at Baltimore, where they've done this kind of thing, to the benefit of the city, a city that was really on its, on its knees 20 years ago. So these are the kind of things that Ojai, I think, needs to start looking at in the big picture about how to move forward with housing crisis, with properties, with school enrollment dropping. And that's really what this discussion is all about, is that it's not just a landmark property, or it's not just a historic property. It's about, if we landmark it, if it comes to that and it's approved, how does that benefit Ojai? How does that help Ojai, not hurt Ojai?
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt. However, Chair, could you please keep the discussion to the history of the site?
So,
So we don't, just so we don't go places that we're not supposed to go tonight. We're supposed to be talking about the history of Matilaha.
Just, want to get the conversation on track, which is the history of Matilaha and what the goal was and the goal is as far as that history. So I think that's why we're here to talk about this, now that the air has been cleared.
Thank you. Rick, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I don't have anything to add, but thank you.
Okay. And Gina?
No, I don't have anything to add. I just, going forward, I like to take off anything that says historic district on that, just to lessen the confusion, because it's too close to downtown to make people wonder and think, and just so we can clean that up and just take that off. I would really appreciate it.
Excellent suggestion. Thank you. I will point out too, and Craig can correct me, that the format of, so typically when we're evaluating somebody who has come to us because they want to landmark their property, the requirement is done by the city that they create, that they go out and the city actually goes out and finds somebody who's going to create that historic resources report. So they do that. If the person is coming to us asking for the property to be landmarked, they pay for the report. As Kathy was saying, we went to the school. We actually paid for that report. We paid for the plaque to be done because, again, it was something that we asked. So, so what I was saying, all I was saying is for people that don't know the report that Craig prepared for us, looks like the form we would see on a historic resources report, because that's where we find how something is historic.
I just wanted to add to that a lot of people think that we consider, the Historic Preservation Commission considers any old building historic, but that's not true. The Historic Preservation Commission needs to follow a very carefully defined set of criteria as to what makes a building historic or not. These criteria were established at the national level by the Secretary of the Interior standards, and then they were adopted by the State Board of Historic Preservation, and then local boards like our council have set up their ordinances to copy or at least to represent those same criteria. So from local communities to the national government, the federal government, they follow pretty much the same criteria and standards so that everybody's kind of on the same page. And this makes it also easier for the property owner because they kind of know what the standards are that their property is evaluated on, and everybody can agree on what makes it historic or not. There always is subjective evaluation going on in that process. So there are criteria that are used to determine whether a house is or a building is historic or just old. And I looked at the history of Matilaha Middle School, formerly Nordhoff High School, and it seemed to fit into at least 4 of the categories. And according to the city's requirements, only 1 of those criteria needs to be fulfilled for it to be deemed historic, whether it's a landmark or just a historic resource. Because communities also, they don't have to landmark every building. They can just have a list of historic resources so that when a project comes to them, the planners know that is set apart a little bit as historic. So I tried to break down the history of the buildings and the school into the 4 criteria. Criteria 1 being that it's character or interest or value.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Can we stay away from anything that has to do with landmarking? No we can't talk about criteria. Let's just talk about the history of the building and not put it into a criteria category, because that's giving the implication that we're already on the road to landmarking something, and it's been established that we're only talking about the history of the building and or site tonight, and we haven't done any of that.
But doesn't the public need to know? I mean, the first step is not even the first step, but the first thing of interest is this actually a historic building or not?
Well, that's what we're talking about, is talking about history.
I think, and this goes back to Craig's use of proposed district. You know, Craig uses very specific historic preservation language that we don't always use, like historic criteria. I think, you know, if I were saying it, I would say historic details, which would, you know, so I think it's just a language thing that Craig is using, that really classic language.
Right, and it's really important not to give even the impression that we're talking about designating this as a landmark. Tonight we're talking about the history, and I don't mean to say the only like it's not much, but what we have tonight is something that was submitted by Mr. Walker, and we have that history. And other than that, I don't know that there's any history that's been brought forward tonight. And so if you want to talk about the history that is in here, but I think it's important to not put it in categories of state and national criteria that could make it a landmark. And so that's all. The specific discussion tonight about the history. And if this is the only history that's being brought forward tonight, I think the commission wants to talk about it and then decide what they want to do. Talk about it in a different manner at a different meeting. Perhaps bring more history in, if there is any more history, and see where they want to go forward with that from here. Thank you.
Okay, well, part of the history of the buildings at Matilaha, they were a fulfillment of Mr. Libby's vision. Mr. Libby, between 1917 and 1920, he had a vision for Ojai that it would be transformed from an Old West kind of ramshackle wooden buildings in a dusty downtown, that it would become a Spanish village. And that was kind of part of the City Beautiful movement that swept the country after the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, where they had the White City that was a unified design that showed city planning, that had broad boulevards with tall monuments. And so in 1915, kind of a replica of that idea was done in the Spanish style in Balboa Park. And Mr. Libby went and visited that, and he got together with two San Diego architects, the firm of Mead and Requa, and he designed the kind of classic Mission Revival buildings downtown Ojai, the pergola, the arcade, the post office tower, and extending on from that, the El Roblar Hotel, the library, the Ojai Valley Inn with its Neff Lounge, and then he built out he subdivided the Arbolada, and he wanted that to be Spanish-style buildings too, and he had 3 spec houses that he built there by George Washington Smith. The community who followed him wanted to extend that concept, and so you saw during the whole 20s many more of these architectural masterpieces being done throughout Ojai for other public buildings like Crotona, and many other buildings downtown were done in this same style. And of course, you have a lot of those were done by Santa Paula architect Roy Wilson, who designed many of Ojai's Spanish-style buildings in that post-Libby era of expanding that concept, that vision of Ojai. And Mr. Wilson was hired by the Nordhoff School District to design the elementary school downtown. He also did the Bill Baker's Bakery, that it was a zoo and is now the Duchess. He also designed, not in the Spanish style, but he designed San Antonio School out in the East End. He designed the theater up at Crotona, and he designed the new Nordhoff High School buildings along El Paseo Drive. So he was very prominent in Ventura County. I think he was the first recognized architect in Ventura County, and he designed these buildings in that style. And you'll notice that at that same time, or some years earlier, the Arbolada had been developed by Mr. Libby, and it had the windy streets with the oak trees and the rock-lined streets, and the new part of Nordhoff was going to face the Arbolada, so it really became an Arbolada campus, and that Spanish style really fit in with the whole concept of the Arbolada. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your viewpoint, Mr. Libby died, and then the Depression came, so the Arbolada never really got developed as he envisioned it, and it only really came to life as a housing development in the late 40s and early 50s, which is why when you drive through, there's a lot of more ranch-style homes in there, because they were all developed during that later stage. So I think that's part of the history of those buildings that ties in with the history of the community. Also, the development of Nordhoff High School was part of the high school movement. I wasn't even aware that there was a high school movement. I just thought Ojai didn't get around to building a high school until 1909. You know, I thought maybe they were late in the game. But apparently that wasn't so, that this high school movement started. The years given are usually between 1910 and 1940. It was really an amazing movement because it was all grassroots. There wasn't a federal government or a state government say, you're going to start having every kid go to high school now, and they're going to have to go through those extra 4 years. It was from the ground up. People wanted their children to be educated, to form this middle class, and all the movement came from the bottom, from the parents. And Ojai was actually one of the beginners of that movement, one of the early adopters of that movement. And the reason for that is we were very lucky to have Thatcher School and its founder, Sherman Day Thatcher, who developed one of America's top private schools here in Ojai, but he also had an extreme interest in the community and the town, and he put a lot of energy. He was responsible for our first library, the George Thatcher, that was his brother who died, the George Thatcher Memorial Library, which used to be where the Art Center is. It's now up on Lion Street and abandoned. That should be a landmark, excuse me. But also he was responsible for starting the public high school, for getting the signatures on the petition to form a high school district and provide this place for the people of Ojai to send their children. And he also, when 1921 came around, he was one of the spearheaders of the effort to form the city of Ojai. Without Mr. Thatcher and Mr. Bristol, who was the first principal of Nordhoff High School, the city of Ojai might not have happened for some time after that, because those two men really got the city of Ojai founded. So as far as this high school movement, Ojai was really an early adopter and was part of that movement. To form its high school, it was really formed by the people of Ojai in response to this desire to educate their children. Another thing is, I had discovered that the Chaparral Auditorium was a WPA project, and I don't think we knew that at the time. I talked to David Mason. The only WPA projects we knew about were the old firehouse, which is now the Topa Topa Vineyard, or whatever vineyard it is on South Montgomery Street. That was a WPA project from the Depression. There was also some bridges out in the East End, but the auditorium at Chaparral, now Legacy, was a WPA project formed during the Depression. And there was some misunderstanding about when the theater was built at Matilaha, or at Nordhoff, the theater we all go to the plays, because there were two different dates given. There was like 1929 when the school was formed, but there was also in the 30s. Well, it turned out that in the 30s they discovered the theater as built was not safe, and they had to tear it down, and they rebuilt it with WPA funds and WPA labor. So that was another part of this historic movement, was the WPA movement, and also the Arbolada campus. I talked about that. But I think another thing that makes a building historic are the people that are represented by that school through history. And I think that was one of the things that the historic report said. There was nobody that went to Nordhoff with any historic significance for the people of Ojai. And I went, no, that's not so, because I put a list here of quite a few people that have come out, and I'm sure there's quite a few more. But of course, the association with Sherman Thatcher was just amazing, that our school was really his brainchild, and he was the one that contacted Berkeley and got Mr. Bristol to come down to be the first principal. He was the principal for 12 years. His wife started the Bristol School, which was located on the corner of Bristol Street and Ojai Avenue on the on the northwest corner there, where there's some condos up there. That was Mr. Bristol's school. It got burned down in the big fire, but they were able to rebuild it. And then when Mrs. Bristol and Mr. Bristol got too old, they sold out to Edward Yeomans, who started Ojai Valley School. And Ojai Valley School really now charts their history back to the Bristol School. So Mr. Bristol, who was associated with Nordhoff High School, was responsible for that school, and he, along with Mr. Thatcher, were the two driving forces of getting the people of this area to sign the petitions and vote in favor of cityhood incorporation in 1921. Also, Grace Hobson Smith. Grace Hobson, the Hobson family owned this house. This was their estate, and she grew up here, Grace Hobson. Mr. Hobson was very important in the history of Ventura County, and they lived and were responsible in Ojai. She was the first valedictorian, graduating class and valedictorian of Nordhoff High School. She went on to donate. When she died, she wanted her husband to donate this property to the city of Ojai for use for the public, and Zelma Wilson designed it into a city hall. She was a famous Ojai architect. So there's a lot of connections there. I could go on. I want to mention just one more, because one that's dear to my heart is Helen Baker Reynolds. Helen Baker was born in the Porch Gallery House, that two-story house downtown Ojai. She was born there and grew up. She was quite a remarkable young lady. When she was a senior at Nordhoff High School, she was not only the valedictorian, but she and her best friend, Ruth Garland, won their division at the Ojai Tennis Tournament, which was girls under 18 years of age. This is throughout all Southern California. They won that, and they also that same year won the Southern California Chemistry competition at USC. So over all the schools in California, they won. So they were quite an accomplished pair. But what's interesting about her, which you'll appreciate, Maura, is that she went on to become California's first environmental lobbyist. And she was at first the president and head of the California Roadside Council that got rid of all the billboards out there. And she also started the Planning and Conservation League, that was the lobbying group for all of the environmental laws that we have, like CEQA was her doing. She got that passed. She got the Coastal Commission Act and all of that through. She did a lot of these early things, so she was quite a remarkable woman. And when Caltrans was going to put a freeway through Ojai, she even came down to Ojai, her old hometown, and made sure that the freeway didn't come through Ojai. I don't want to just take up all your time, because it is in this report, so you can read a lot of this. But I think there's quite a bit of things that are special about that campus and about that school, not the least of which Jeffrey Starkweather was a graduate. Yes?
Me too.
You were.
Mark was ahead of me.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
62.
My class was the class of 66, which was the last class to graduate from that old campus.
66 was?
Class of 1966. It was the last class to graduate from the campus there in the Arbolada, and then all the poor guys that came after got the new school. But that was where I went to my junior high school. Yeah.
You're bragging about being younger.
Any questions?
The Fukasawas sound amazing.
But I could go on. I would love to tell you the story of Kyo Fukasawa, but I don't know if we have the time. But she was an amazing teacher. But she grew up in Ojai, and she went to school at San Antonio School, walked to Nordhoff every day from the East End, where her family worked on one of the ranches out there. They were the only Japanese-American family living in the Ojai Valley prior to World War II. And I believe the only family in Ojai history that spent a war in internment camp. But her brother had the choice of joining the Japanese-American unit that went over to Germany, and they went up through Italy and fought and won. And he wrote that he was amongst the group that freed Dachau, the German concentration camp there. And when they went into the camp, he remembered feeling the irony of it, that his family was back home in an internment camp, and he was there. But all of that family grew up and went to Nordhoff, and then Keo came back and was a teacher that everyone that had her remember. I don't know, did you have Keo? Keo was a teacher too. She was a remarkable math teacher who blessed us all with her existence. You too?
I didn't have Miss Fukasawa because I wasn't very good in math, and she was for the upper students. And correct me if I'm wrong, but she had what she called little weenie dogs. You remember that? Yeah, because she had a certain way of talking, and she was famous for what was called it was like just a spontaneous quiz, and she called it quickie.
And
so she was famous for this.
She was so dedicated as a teacher that a lot of teachers just go through and see if you have the right answer, but she would go through every problem that every student did every night in their homework and make little suggestions and correct how they. It was just amazing how dedicated. And she ran the Rockhound Club, where she took kids up to Arizona and different areas to go on field trips, and she ran the academic decathlon team. So she was just another one of many remarkable. If you read the article in the Ojai Valley News by Clive Lehman, he gave a little picture of what the history of that school was like and what it meant to him. Mr. Landon, Mr. Roller, who can forget about him? There was so many just wonderful, Mr. Heller, so many wonderful teachers.
Thank you, Craig.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you, Craig. I've missed the stories. It's why I used to show up at HPC just to listen to everybody telling stories. So thank you for that. I was the question I was going to ask is actually kind of an action item or an item within number 5, and that was where do we go from here? And one of the questions we are trying, and item 5 is to come up with the items to talk about for a joint meeting. Are we okay with moving to item 5?
Well, you can, if you want to come back to the end of number 4 after you go to 5, but you need to end this number 4 with, is this an item that you'd like to take forward? Do you have a closure for this item now?
Well, my closure for item number 4 was in item number 5, which is, do we want to talk about Matilla Junior High School or Matilla Middle School as a part of the joint meeting with council? So it was kind of like, okay, do I jump or do I reach?
I think you can talk about what you want to do with the information you've received tonight. Do you want to move forward and put it on another agenda, do some research to put it on your, I think it's appropriate to come to some closure on number 4 before jumping to number 5, even though number 4 could be something that's going to go on your list of items to take to your joint meeting.
Yep,
Does that make
okay.
sense?
So I'll open it up for commissioners on.
Would it be possible to somehow form a subcommittee that would go for a subcommittee with the school district to just talk about the history and what possibly could be a cooperative effort between the two that would kind of honor the school and make sure that moving forward it's.
So I will say that as far as the commissioners creating a subcommittee or an ad hoc kind of committee, that's something that would need the blessing of the council.
Okay.
And that could be at the joint meeting as one of your items to bring to the joint meeting.
There, we are talking about number 5. Yes.
We are, however, I'm just still trying to close number 4.
Oh, I know that. I will tell you along that line, I plan to stay in regular contact with Atticus on if there's something that happens that I feel he needs to know. And I think in our discussions today that if there's something that Atticus thinks is going on that we need to be aware of, that we'll do that without forming an ad hoc. And then if something comes up that you're talking about, Craig, that needs the focus maybe of the commission, then that would be a good time to form an ad hoc to address that issue.
I think
Right now, I'm not sure we have an issue. Go ahead,
anything
because we're
that can
just
be
doing the history. Go ahead.
anything that be collaborative is always the best route, so that if that's the direction that we want to take, is to keep learning about the history and understanding the property, I think that having the school district involved in conversations, it's always better to have collaboration.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the two of us are in agreement with that. But again, yeah, and then, if something's coming up, something on our part or something on their part that needs an ad hoc, then we could move to that.
Because I just know that at one of their meetings, the school board said they wanted to work with the city on different issues and collaborate, and this might be a good.
Sorry, I don't want to break procedure. Can I clarify?
Could you come to the mic, please?
Absolutely. I just wanted to clarify that because. And as I clarify, I want to remind, I'm just here in my personal capacity, not on behalf of the board. I'm the board president, so I do speak in regards to the work that the board is doing or the business that might be coming from before the board, but the board hasn't met or talked about any of this, so I want to make that very clear. It's just me and my own respect, and I don't control board members. Each board member gets to operate how they do. I'm just the board president right now. To just clarify, Mr. Walker, Commissioner Walker, yes, there is a subcommittee that the school district absolutely is passionate about creating a 2+2 committee, which would be 2 members of the school board and 2 members of the city council. That would then, it would all be subject to the Brown Act, but then they would meet to try the whole vision, or the whole goal was try to work on collaborative issues that affect both the city, the school district, because we know when both of those systems are working together, it helps everyone in our valley. So whether or not that 2+2 committee would be opened up to commissioners from a subcommittee, I'm not sure. I'll be honest with you, we've been very, very busy with the work before us, so we haven't even gotten to that creation of the subcommittee. That might be a question more appropriate for the council to decide how they would like to see their representation on that subcommittee. But I just wanted to clarify that as the board made it clear that they wanted to establish a 2+2 committee to try to work together on certain issues. So I appreciate everything you're saying. I will absolutely return it to the board so they can have an idea of what may be possible. But I want to be very careful. I don't want to signal yes, no, maybe so. I don't know, because the board hasn't taken any action or even had a chance to discuss any of this. But I just wanted to clarify that 2+2 committee, its intention, and I think that might be more appropriate for the council to decide who would be representing the city on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And again, our discussions would purely resolve around anything that's historic in nature. The rest of it can go to that person sitting to your left.
And Chair Akins, I'm going to kind of jump back to where you wanted to kind of blend 4 into 5. Since what you might want to do is just say, okay, the discussion is over and let's just jump over to 5. And then, of course, this is going to be one of the items perhaps that you're going to talk about putting on the joint meeting or not.
Yes. So is there anything else? Craig, we can set up, meeting after meeting and give you part where you're just going to tell us Ojai history. And I've missed those days, so we're glad you're here.
Yes.
And thank you. Always. Yes.
So obviously, we can all see how articulate that Craig Walker is. If he says that at some point in history he saw an HRR from Matilda High, I have a feeling it might exist. So is if I could be any help to search or anything, to Kathy or anything, just let me know. I'm happy to research and look. I would
Yeah.
love to see what that says.
I
And-
was sick at the time, so I might have been delirious, but I'm pretty sure I read through it very carefully and took notes.
I'm pretty sure that Kathy knows where all the skeletons are buried.
I really am not aware of one. And I'm sure I would have been, but doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So we'll look into it for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did a search. I couldn't find anything on that this morning. Okay, so are we done then with item number 4, and we can move to item number 5? Yep. Okay, we jumped.
Okay.
Item number 5, staff report.
Number 5 on the
Great.
agenda. So
Thank you, Atticus, for being here.
Thank
Bye.
you all. Thank you.
So this is, number 5 is an opportunity for the Historic Preservation Commission to discuss items to be considered for a joint meeting with the City Council. It's anticipated that there might be a meeting in June or early July, and the HPC will have an opportunity to present items to the council requesting review and approval for inclusion in your work plan. And items for the work plan include items that require staff involvement or money from the Historic Preservation Commission's annual budget. And the items that are listed here are the Matilaha Junior High School, Ojai City Jail, Historic Structures of Merit, City Chambers Rehabilitation, and CEQA Education regarding historic structures. So staff would recommend, and I'm sure you all know this, that you're not going to have a whole lot of time when you have this joint meeting, and having 5 items is probably not realistic, and you might want to limit it to just a couple. So I'll leave it to you to discuss which of, or if any of these items that you want to talk about, or you want to move forward to your joint meeting when it's scheduled.
Okay. Gina, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I was just doing the math of you know.
Public input, you're supposed to get that before you deliberate.
Excuse me. If you have any questions of staff
I thought we were-
before opening up the public comments.
It was a staff report, questions to the staff.
Yes, so.
But yeah, thanks for helping us stay on the path. Yes. So, Gina, do you have any questions on what Mara just said?
I am just wanted to clarify, it is 1 hour. Is that the usual time of the meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Should we take public comments? Because I think this 5 Matilaha High School, is that what you're talking about, Jeffrey?
That is what I'm talking about.
Are you going to talk about, okay.
I can talk about what I want to talk about.
Well, no, you can't. You can talk about,
On the topic.
yes.
I would strongly recommend that the Matilaha High School not be on the joint agenda for several reasons. One, it doesn't sound like you're ready for it. And if it's just a history discussion, I don't know that the City Council wants to sit here and discuss the history of the school. They want to be talking about joint actions. And secondly, so I think that this is not appropriate for this thing. And plus, given all the confusion that has gone around, but what was the intent of this previous item, number 3, I think your potential to get even more confusion and people coming to that meeting concerned about it being brought forward, because what would you bring beyond history? You'd have to bring some kind of action. So I would recommend not putting that on there. Thank you.
Okay, for the second time today, I would say that the HPC is not going to go and waste their time in a joint meeting with the City Council by being confused when we get there. So, yeah, I raised that earlier today. It's a waste of our time. It's a waste of the City Council's time. But yes, thank you. Okay, now to the council.
Commissioner comments, or?
It's
Discussion, yeah.
discussion for us.
Through Alex?
Alex?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, Mara.
Is there anybody who wishes to speak on number 5?
No, ma'am. No.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for asking.
Public comments?
Public comments are closed. Although they tend to sneak in again. So, yes, Gina, discussion. Thank you, Mara.
I mean, now it's to discuss what we think we should talk about at the joint council meeting, correct?
Yeah, I think kind of to get your sense of priority for these items.
I would
Or
like
anything
to,
else or not.
I would like to give the opportunity to this new council, the opportunity to talk about the historic structures of Merritt. I think that's really important.
Okay. A question on that. So the historic structures, because we have the man who created them and has put them before the council twice on our left. I'm thinking before we talk to the council that we would want to update those historic structures of merit. And so that is a question that's, I think, maybe best handled by maybe you and Craig on determining whether he would have the time to update that prior to that meeting in order to make it a part of our agenda for that meeting.
I'm always available to talk, to
Brian,
work on this.
are we putting together a list of things that we want their permission to work on? Or are we putting together recommendations for them? Because I totally agree that we need to work on that. So I would be agreeable to that, but I didn't know if we could work on it ahead of time. Is that what you're saying? The council has directed you that we shouldn't work on anything unless they've given their permission? I didn't quite understand that when I heard it at one of the meetings.
Well, without going against the Brown Act and without like creating an ad hoc committee, the commission certainly needs to have some kind of information, I think, to get support from the council. And if you individually were updating your list, but at the same time, I think that you'd be going to the council to ask permission to work on something. So, and so that would be
Because we
right,
did.
because you
we
want,
do
if you're going to
have
update the list, then you're asking for permission to work on
little
it.
history on that. We did create the initial list. Some of those would need to be removed because they've become landmarks, and some have been actually bulldozed down. So we would want to remove a couple, but there's others that have come to our attention ahead of time or since then. So it might be good to have what we mean to them by the list. I mean, it's a living document, so it's not something that would need a big production every time. But we just need the concept approved, because we actually created that list at the request of the council. We went to them and they said, just tell us what buildings you think are valuable for our community. So we spent quite a bit of time and created the list. But I don't know why it's never gone before them for
I know
them
why.
to approve it. And then they always say, well, that's never been approved by the council, but I don't understand why, because we did the work on it, and we certainly would like it to go before them. And then I think it creates a hole for the planners, because when a project comes before them, then nothing that's on that list is even visible to them. You know, they just will say, well, you know, it's not a historic resource. But if we had that list, then the planners would be better able, I think, to flag, you know, properties that might need further review before approving a demolition or something like that.
So I think we've already established that we have gotten permission from council to work on this list, previous councils. It's actually been up on our website, it's come down, on the city website, it's come up, come down. I mean, so it is a living document. It is something that we've already gotten permission to work on. We just don't, we would like to come to them with something that's correct information and then ask for the direction that they would like us to take with it. Yes.
Can I ask a question, please? Craig, if you're able to update the document, since you're the most familiar with it, can we put it on our agenda as an action item and submit it to council for approval so we don't have to spend time in our joint session on it? I mean, I don't know that it's worthy of joint session discussion if we can do it that way.
Well, the only part of that is when we developed it before, it went, the city sent a letter to every one of the people on the list. They all had the opportunity to come to a meeting and express their view on it at a public hearing, which happened. That happened twice, because we did it once on our own, and then we did it once at a joint meeting with the council where a letter was sent out and the people came. So it would seem like at least the new properties would need to have that same courtesy of having a letter sent out and saying, you're being considered to go on a city list. If you have an objection, come to this meeting and state it.
So the answer then is that if this is going to be, if the list is going to be revised and there's a process to it, like you just mentioned, of having the property owners contacted and such, this needs to go back to the council and to be put on your work plan.
Which means it would make a higher priority for what we're talking about, the whole reason for item number 5.
Right.
Right.
So it would be an item that you would take to your joint meeting.
Right.
If
Again,
it's one of your
to me,
priorities.
having been, a bystander and watched this, I think Paul Blatz, who asked for that definition on what we were and why it was created, the historic structures of merit, although the code mentions the historic structures
But
of merit.
I guess we could also just bring the ones that we went through that process with and not add more at this time. And then we could, down the road, we could get rid of the ones that are either no longer there or are landmarked, and we could take those off, but just not add any more now and get the list established so that then in the future, it's just getting their permission to do an update or something.
Yeah,
When perhaps that's part of the action that you're going to request from them, that it be a living document. But regardless, it's something that needs to go to the council to get their blessing.
Okay.
Right.
Because it is something that CEQA actually says you should have in your city, and they say it should be updated every 5 years. So that's what this list would be for, would be not only recognition of these properties, but also a list that the city has of potentially not proven, but potentially historic.
So the question is, new council, maybe a second generation, and putting it on the list to me is, and Craig made a great suggestion that we just pair the existing document to what's currently survived that, and then take it to city council and said, okay, this is it. Again, it is in the code. Do you support us getting this done and taking it to you and getting it approved, or is this just another waste of time? And as you said, only the council can say, give us the thumbs up or the thumbs down.
That's correct.
Okay.
And so that's why, that's why I would put it in there on that, just so we can resurrect it or bury it and stop talking about it, even though it should, I think it's something that should be done for the many reasons that Craig said, but.
I just think that we should try to keep our conversations down to very few, because every conversation gets way longer than we anticipate. It's just, so many people with questions and so much historical backstory with so much that, I think that is a really important one. Do we have any reason to want to bring the Downtown Historic District to the Joint Council?
To bring the what?
The Downtown Historic District, the process. Do we, the progress, are we, I don't know if we'd be ready to do that. I don't think so,
No,
but
we're
I
not
just.
ready to do
Okay.
that yet.
I just wanted to ask.
Yeah. And that would just be an update to council. We already have the opportunity to do
Right.
that without using the,
But something so simple like council chambers rehabilitation could be over an hour right there just talking about it.
It's too,
Because
we're not ready for that.
yeah, so I don't think
But
that should.
can we do the historic structures of merit without having it in the joint session? Can we do it as an action item in here, review the document and send it to city council?
No,
Is
it has to be asked,
approved?
we have to get their blessing to go back to continue working on it, or
Oh, it's
to
like
even get it to
closed?
them. So you don't have to take it to the joint meeting. You could request staff to take it, to get it on their agenda. It just might not be for the next 7 or 8 agendas. But, or it'll be whenever it can get on there.
Okay, but
So it
maybe
doesn't have to
tonight then,
go.
maybe we can agree during our joint meeting that we limit the conversation of historic structures of merit to a very short presentation, which is, we worked on this, it needs to be updated, we don't want to wait for the agenda, can we keep working on it and update it? And then move on to the next item.
Right, the fewer words, the more
Yeah.
items.
Yeah.
Yeah,
let's
so,
just get to
and we can present them with a packet with the current list, so and the history of it, so we don't have to start the whole conversation from the
You
beginning.
will want them to have information.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Just as a yes or no, we don't have to go into a big story about it, right?
Yeah.
thumbs up, thumbs down.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. The CEQA education regarding historic structures, that was my request to just have some kind of training like that in one of our meetings. I don't think we need to get approval from the city council to have training, do we?
Depends who's doing the training and how much work it's going to take to get it to you. Like, are we having a professional come in, or are we having one of the commissioners talk about it and prepare something? Is staff being asked to prepare a presentation? That's up to what you.
I just think it would be good if the city attorney could come to this meeting, and he could just tell us what the CEQA, so that we're all on the same page. Sometimes I feel we're not on the same page on what are the implications and what are required by CEQA, but also some questions about the city ordinance, because sometimes I think there's a difference of opinion on that. So maybe there would be questions we could ask about that. But just kind of a legal review by the city attorney on some questions on the city ordinance and CEQA.
Yeah, Cindy, you had said a while ago, we had that roundabout of asking, our job according to ordinance is that we look for structures of merit or historic structures and cultural significance, and we do our research. We should be able to have these discussions without asking council to give us permission to have these, to do our job. So I know we had talked about during a joint council to getting clarification. Do they want us to go to them to have a discussion about something, or can we just follow?
I think we resolved that with the Matilaha discussion item. We can have discussion items, we just can't take action on them.
Okay.
So it's just, I think it was just a language barrier happening for some
Okay, so
reason.
you feel, because I'm kind of feeling that with the structures of merit, not being able to work on it until we get permission to work on it.
Well, it sounds like that was approved by the council and a closed item, and it takes staff time, and so it's sort of an action item. So we're not allowed to move forward with it because it would require staff time, is that correct? Sort of?
But that's one of my questions, is the city ordinance says that the commission has the duty to investigate and and nominate buildings for either like a structure of merit or a landmark. But it's almost like we have to go to them and say, is it okay with you if we nominate this building as a landmark? But in order to nominate it, we have to have done some work to know that it's even eligible
Yeah.
for that. So they're going to have to decide, well, do we want them to do work on that building? But we don't know if it's historic yet, because we haven't, so it seems like a catch-22.
Well, that was why we had the discussion about Matilaha tonight without having to get council approval. That very argument was that it's just a discussion. It's not an action item to decide if it's something valid.
But even to nominate, like the law says that the Chamber of Commerce could nominate Matilaha as a historic landmark. It says any public agency, any individual who lives within the valley can nominate a building. So it's like they can do it, and then there's a timeline and a process, and you've got to do your work. But if we want to do it, it's like this long process where we have to get these pre-approvals. And
Well, specifically for having staff work on it, you need their approvals because you're directing staff to do work and they're, and our salary's being paid.
right, but if the Ojai Land Conservancy nominated a building, you would have to do that work, because the law says that any organization can nominate a building as a historic structure, and you have 90 days to write a report. That's what the law says.
But don't they have to pay a fee? Like, doesn't an outside
would have to
agency
pay a
have to?
fee.
And we don't have to pay that fee, right?
They would have to pay a fee that would pay for
Staff time, yeah. Yeah, we get free staff time, but no
So-
staff time.
It almost seems like there's none of it.
What a deal.
I just wanted to know if we had good clarity, because I think that would be an important thing, just so but if you feel like, I know that you and Brian did have some conversation that I think you felt comfortable with the answers, so.
About the CEQA
About
discussion?
our ordinance and how the conversations happen in our thing. So if you,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to the chair and vice chair. If you feel comfortable with the answer, then I'm fine. But I just wanted to understand if, I know we talked about it at one time, wanting council clarification of the process according to ordinance. But if you feel like you have that answer.
No, I think we have it because we did it tonight. We had a discussion and we discussed, and now we're going to get it on our next agenda somewhere.
Okay.
We just lived through the process.
Now,
Right?
besides the historic structures of merit, what else do we want to talk to council?
Jail, I think we figured that out. Don't we need to have some kind of discussion about why? I mean, we could send it to council for approval, but I have a feeling council's going to want, like, it's coming out of the blue. Why are we naming the jail? What's the story here? So I feel like that's a valid discussion for the joint session. What we talked about tonight, why, what it means, and if council will approve it.
Generally, we would, like we're doing with the plaque, we're making a recommendation on the plaque to the council.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we can do that without going to the council and say, hey, can we get your permission to make a recommendation to you for approval? But to me, it's kind of like getting a direction. If we were maybe further along the process, if the school district was further along the process, if they knew what they were going to, if they had some idea in Matilaha Junior High School to tear the whole thing down, that might be a question to the city council on what role would you like us to take in that process, whether it's hands-off or doing, historic
Wait,
investigation.
Are you moving to the junior high from the jail? Did you just do that?
I'm just
I'm
doing
confused.
a larger item
Okay,
example.
oh, right.
Okay,
Yeah.
the jail is something that
Okay.
we can meet
Okay.
on, we can make a recommendation to them, we don't have to get their permission to.
Oh, okay, because it's on this list. But I'm wondering, I feel like since we passed the motion on the Harry Hunt plaque, I would like to see a future discussion item on addressing some of the talk that we had about the jail tonight in different avenues, like Craig
Yeah,
talking.
yeah.
So we can do that amongst ourselves.
Yeah,
So we can cross
that's,
that off the
to
list.
me,
Okay,
that,
good.
We're going to cross that
Action
out.
item.
Okay.
Has it
We're
been
gonna-
decided to take Harry Hunt question to the joint meeting to ask if there can be a plaque there?
No, it's going to get You say
That's
it.
the recommendation that's gonna go. It's, first, we're gonna get it drafted up. We're gonna talk about it in the meeting in a month. And then once we come up with what our recommendation is, then we will send that to the council. But we don't need a meeting to do that.
Okay.
Well, yeah, the only time it came up in the joint meeting is because we might get it through to the council in the joint meeting, because that's gonna be sooner than what shows up on the agenda.
Mm.
So that's the reason, and that was a
Yeah.
suggestion you made on speeding it up.
And so Matilaha's crossed off too.
So, no, I don't think Matilaha's crossed out. We just crossed out the jail, because we're gonna move that plaque forward through here and then discuss the jail someday. But I believe that we should talk about Matilaha in the joint meeting, because we should talk about some of the things that we discussed tonight, and whether the council, how the council feels about an ad hoc or a two-party meeting like Atticus discussed with the school board between us, to avoid some of the pitfalls that happened with Chaparral. And I think that's a really good conversation for us to have with council, since council's been involved with the school board of late. So I would like to see Matilaha on there, not to discuss the fact that it's historic, but to discuss the fact that we should interact with the school board for future, just to stave off future miscommunication.
Yeah,
And we
what our-
need
what our
permission to
role
do
should
that.
be.
Yeah, we need permission to
So
do
we're not
that.
talking about, do you want us to
No.
landmark it? We're
No.
talking, we're just
No, it's
asking.
too soon.
What, yeah, no, I
Yeah.
agree with you completely. We're just asking them, what do you see our role
Yeah,
as?
there are a lot of conversation needs to happen to see where the direction will be,
Yeah,
and
I
we
mean,
need permission for that.
Yeah. I think that's an excellent thing to go
Yeah.
before the council, because we operate at their guidance.
Do you agree with that? Is that?
So we have historic structures of merit, and we have the junior high school. And then as far as CEQA education, we could have a sentence during that joint session about, can we borrow Matt for an hour and learn about CEQA and ask him questions? Or you, or you and Matt together. I mean, that's a pretty quick
Can we go back to
request.
the Matilaha Junior High? When we do have our joint council, instead of just saying Matilaha Junior High School and scaring everyone again, can we say to discuss, working with the school district in conversations, so it's not,
On historic structures.
Yeah, OUSD interface and roles, and, yeah.
Yeah.
And don't use the word proposed.
Don't use
Don't
that
use-
word.
and don't use historic district.
Don't use historic district, even though it's defined in our code.
Nope, not a
No, we're
landmark
not saying
either.
the L word
We're
either.
calling it the campus, the Matilaha
There we
That
go.
campus. or something.
place, yeah.
Um,
Okay.
Okay,
So in summary, we have the
borrow that. Okay.
interface with OUSD, revisit historic structures of merit, update and approve. Anything else? And a question about CEQA education and why we would like
Yeah,
it.
a question, yeah.
Yeah, a
Can
question.
we borrow Matt? Yeah.
So those three, is that clear? Anybody have anything else?
Nope, I'm good with that.
me too.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Moving on.
moving on. Item 6.
So, would you take I know it's not an action item for a vote, but can I hear that all 5 of you are in favor of Matilaha Junior High School and Historic Structures of Merit?
The
And the
OUSD
CEQA
interface.
Right, yeah, the language, yes, the language can come later. In fact, I'll run it by you before it goes anywhere. And the CEQA education, those would be things for the joint meeting, and the Ojai City Jail is something that is not for the joint meeting, nor is the Chamber's rehabilitation.
So we can do this by consensus, right? Or do we need to wake up Alex?
Yeah, let's do it by consensus.
Okay, I'm all for it.
Everybody
Yes.
in favor?
I'm in favor.
In favor?
Aye, favor.
Anyone not in favor? No, okay. Great.
Okay.
Before we jump, is there grants and stuff too, when you have a historic structure like this that is used, so, I mean, we're using it for our city hall, that there might be something.
There are grants to rehabilitate public buildings, yes.
Yeah.
And that would be why we would want to add it as a discussion item, so that we could discuss those grants.
Is that something we have to?
Well, I think that it sounds to me, just from previous discussions, that some of the commissioners, or Cindy, may
Cindy.
have,
Yeah.
specifically
Yeah.
Cindy, may have.
And now we know when you graduated.
May have knowledge of and information about
Yeah.
and grants, and so it would be totally appropriate for Commissioner Convery to come here and share that knowledge, just like it was appropriate tonight for Commissioner Walker to share the research that he did.
Okay.
So, and that can always be part of your discussion, is the knowledge you have, the research you've done. You're not getting together as a committee and doing it, but you're coming forward with your own information.
So June 8th, we have Downtown Historic District Council review structures of merit, but we're going to cross that off because that'll be on the joint session, right? On our future agenda items?
That's just a standing item, I think.
Yeah, and then,
Oh, yeah.
but we
okay.
can discuss options for council chamber rehabilitation just as a conversation, and I can
Okay.
tell you some of the things I know about how to do it for free.
So did you say you wanted to we're going to take the historic structures of merit off because?
I think that's a
doesn't
joint
need to be on
session
there.
issue. Yeah, I don't
Can
think we have anything to talk
Can we
about,
leave it on in case we want to discuss it first with us?
I guess. I mean, sure. Yeah, do you want to talk about it so that we're really prepared for our joint session?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe you could give us just by cutting out, just giving us the ones that are still, yeah. So
Yeah.
You want me to do my slideshow?
Yes.
I
Always.
love your slideshow.
Yes, we
I've seen it
do.
twice.
We want your slideshow.
Canceled Chambers.
Yeah, and we're gonna order a pizza.
Yeah, that'd be
I
great.
love
Yes.
slideshows. So-
If it's this long of a meeting, we're gonna order pizza too. And then maybe we can add, maybe in July as a discussion item, further discussion about the jail and the proposals that we had tonight about different constables and different history items, you know?
The July 13th?
Yeah, and I have a, maybe not a good idea, but it's an idea that maybe we can talk to the Arts Commission about creating, because I was thinking like not a statue of Harry Hunt, but a plaque on a rock could be artistic, so maybe there's some kind of a, and I loosely use the word sculpture garden, but something like that, outside of the jail and the, just empty space there. Maybe there's some plaques or a rock situation. And maybe that's an Arts Commission conversation. Maybe. Unless it gets messy. And then we won't do it.
Is there consensus to put the jail on for July 13th?
Sure.
Sure.
Do I hear any no's? Okay, it's on.
Okay.
Discussion item for July 13th.
Council Chambers. When are we going to talk about Gina's item?
Gina's what?
The quarterly reach out? Because that was one of the items that we had, and when we were meeting, we said, okay, we're gonna do these, and then we'll put Gina's item at top of the list on June.
Well, I think that we're in the summer months now, but when school returns by, August, it'd be nice if the schools had a letter saying, it's a local field trip that this is available to you if, you contact the HPC.
You wanna
or-
put that August 10th?
Let's do it in June, because it'll take until August to get it figured out,
Yeah,
right?
Okay, well, that's when we originally had it, was
June. Yeah, we have room. I mean, because the council chamber thing is not gonna take nothing's gonna take as long as it did tonight.
Reach out.
And we hopefully won't have
that could just be a letter and an email it, I'm aware of staff time, it's not something that,
yeah. But if you prepare something for a suggestion and it's on here,
yeah.
we could do it pretty reasonably, I think.
Yeah.
Let's do it in June, then it gets done. Done.
So does it sound like, or is there a consensus for Commissioner, McHatton, it's late, to have a letter prepared and put it on for discussion on June 8th? For the, having the school visits at the jail?
I can do that.
Yeah, jail invitation. Come to jail. Go to jail.
You're not past go.
Gina.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's easy. And I'm sure in June we'll have many more things to add for July and August. Right.
By the way, Roy Wilson designed the jail as well.
He did? I never knew that. Huh.
Oh.
Okay.
So,
Yes, you did know that, Brian, because it was in your video.
Oh, was it? That I read?
all right, Brian.
I said to Kimberly, hey, okay, so, our liaison,
Stuck it out.
she did. Mayor Sticks, our liaison, thank you for being here. You always hang in.
Of course I do.
Hang in there for us.
I
Because you
l-
find this so fascinating.
Well, I actually do.
And
The-
we appreciate
The
that.
process, well, I just want to say I appreciate all of you. Welcome. Congratulations. So nice to have you, and Rick as a new, well, you're not so new, right? But I just really am grateful for all your expertise and careful thinking, because it does take time and endurance. Thank you for all the incredible history. I do have one question. I've heard a rumor that the Arbolada was designed after the Lindbergh kidnapping with all those curves. Have you ever heard that? Okay, that could be just a weird rumor.
Ooh, I
Folklore.
I think Terry Hill told me that after the Lindbergh kidnapping, they made a bunch of windy streets, so it'd be really hard to get out. I don't know.
Maybe I heard it from you, Cindy.
Terry, yeah, I probably told you.
Anyway, I just want to say thank you, lots of gratitude, and I look forward to our joint meeting in June. Lots of interesting topics. So thanks for preserving our history. It's really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Kathy. Oh, at least one.
And
Sure.
thank you for working with the school board, because I'm so happy that Atticus was here and just getting everything out and being transparent and working together, because we're all on the same team. So just making it work. So thank you. And thank you, Kathy, for being here.
Yeah. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Maura.
Right. Well, the nice thing was, too, that someone passed me along today in the text messages. So I had his phone number, and then I know him. I don't know Phil Moncharch, and Jim Halverson I know only from reading his COVID articles every week and seeing him on the football field. But Atticus, there's an instant bonding, so that was beneficial.
And thank you for celebrating the Hunt family, because I know that means so much to them, and it's really, that's great. Gary is just an incredible guy.
I can't believe that all the planets aligned for this to happen in like 6 weeks. I mean, yeah.
On her birthday.
Yeah, they told me that. I pulled over and wrote me a big note. Don't forget wife's birthday. And then when I heard that, when we saw the pictures that he had the Purple Cross, I called Kimberly. She's trying to get through LA 20 miles an hour, and said, would he bring that? Because, I've never seen a Purple Cross.
My grandmother was in France in World War I. She served, and she had the same medal that he pulled out from the Arbonne. I have it framed. Yeah, I have some of those things. Yeah.
Anyway,
You all adjourned already?
No, we're still talking. Bang the gavel,
why didn't you have
Brian.
another public
No.
comment?
Well, no, but I wanted to just share with you that the school district has the correspondence between Sherman Thatcher and Walter Bristol when he was hired. They have, when that property was selected, there was a big controversy and a vote because most of the town wanted another area. So we have the tally mark votes from the board members. Yes, the school district values that historical.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Wait a minute.
What?
Don't we have commissioner comments?
Oh, we do.
We did that. I thought we've been doing that all night.
I thought so too. I just wanted to ask if you could take a look at just Google the Matilah.
Mr. Walker, can you talk into the mic, please?
Sorry. If you could go online and it might be helpful to Google the Matilah master plan. It's the master plan that was set up, and just Google that and read through it. It might help to kind of add another dimension to our conversation.
That's the one that you pointed out to me, and then I pulled up. July 12th, 2021. It's
Yeah.
on the board. I'm going to forward that to Mara. We're an electric shut-off today scheduled. Hate that. You feel like you're a caveman.
So I'm sorry, Commissioner, you were suggesting to the chair or to the commission that they check out a Google site that's Matilah Master Plan?
It's on the Ojai Unified School District website, and they have a series of reports relative to their bond. So I think it would be good for the commission to kind of get a feel for what the school board is planning for that site, or was planning before they decided to close it. So
Thank you.
it would just add more information.
Yep. July 12th, 2021. It's part of the package.
I'm sorry.
But I invited her.
And I just want to thank Laura one more time because,
Yes.
Long day.
knowing the rules, above and beyond. Thank you.
Okay, now can I adjourn? Okay.
Brian.
Thank you all.